Chapter 1675, Stage 2 Ultimate Real God. Chapter 1675, Stage 2 Ultimate Real God. As he was trapped within the standalone space, due to the star demons, he naturally needed to find a way to leave. However, Jian Wushuang was dissatisfied with relying on himself to accumulate divine power by training for many years. Hence, he had to hunt down the star demons and get their demon cores. However, there were too many star demons, and they were extremely powerful. Thus, it would not work if he were to use normal hunting techniques. Therefore, Jian Wushuang drafted a plan to hunt them. Frankly speaking, the plan was very simple. He would use the first move, split the heaven's seal, of the Mountain River Map's 9-province seal, and do his best to kill the star demons. As he currently had a great amount of divine power, when he unleashed the split the heaven's seal with his full power, the power that it brought forth would be so powerful that it would make him rank at the front of the real god ranking list. When such an attack was used as a large-range attack, it would be able to kill a great number of star demons. Moreover, this had been proven to be true. Within a range of tens of thousands of miles, among the thousands of star demons with unequal abilities, apart from the 3 crimson star demons which were the strongest, all the other star demons were exterminated by the split the heavens seal. After killing them, Jian Wushuang made his move with lightning speed, and in a short amount of time, he would do his best to collect as many demon cores as possible. When the other star demons finally reacted and headed toward him, he would run back to the standalone space immediately. As long as he escaped into the standalone space, the star demons would not be able to do anything against him. Everything happened as Jian Wushuang had expected. If there were something that he felt was a pity, it would be that he only had 2 breaths' time, and it was too short. Hence, he did not manage to collect a lot of demon cores. The number of demon cores he collected was probably less than 1/4 of what was available. It should be known that when Jian Wushuang had used the split the heaven seal moments ago, he had killed thousands of star demons in one go. Even though he did not manage to collect 1/4 of what was available, he had still managed to collect more than 300 demon cores. After returning to the Crystal Palace, Jian Wushuang sat down with his legs crossed in a big palace immediately. With that, he started to do an inventory check on the number of demon cores that he had collected within the 2 breaths' time. 8 grade 3 green demon cores. 21 normal grade 3 demon cores. 52 grade 2 demon cores. The type of demon core that I have the most is the grade 1 demon core, with a total of 234 of them. By adding all the demon cores together, I will have a total of 322 demon cores. Haha. After checking his inventory, Jian Wushuang was pleasantly surprised at the results. It should be known that the number of demon cores that real god Ziyi had obtained after traveling in the core region of the 8th layer for thousands of years was comparable to what he had at that moment. Moreover, in terms of quality, real god Ziyi's demon cores were inferior to his. With only 1 extermination, his gains were greater than real god Ziyi's, who had traveled in the core region of the 8th layer for thousands of years. Previously, after absorbing real god Ziyi's demon cores, I was about to form the 7th ultimate divine power water droplet. And now, if I absorb all these demon cores, I will definitely be able to form the 7th ultimate divine power water droplet, and even the 8th droplet as well. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. Let's begin. Without much delay, Jian Wushuang started to absorb the pure power within the demon cores with great concentration. At the same time as Jian Wushuang was absorbing the power of the demon cores, Lord Longqi's eyes, which were glowing with a special light, were looking at Jian Wushuang from somewhere within the Crystal Palace. Although he had been staying within the standalone space, he still paid attention to everything that had happened in the outside world moments ago. This little kid, previously, I could tell that he possessed a special treasure that even I was able to detect, and it was as I had expected. However, I did not expect the treasure that he possessed to actually be the Mountain River map. During the battle back then, the Mountain River map should have been torn into pieces, and it was seriously damaged. However, When the little kid took it out, the mountain river map has been patched up completely. Who is the person who patched it up? Long Qi was filled with doubts. He was certain how badly damaged the mountain river map had been after the battle back then. Thus, he also knew how difficult it was to patch it up. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang took out a mountain river map, which was completely intact. No matter who is the person who patched it up, since this little kid has the mountain river map, this means that he is indeed very closely related to the 7-star black sect that Master is in. Hence, I absolutely cannot let such a little kid die here. As Long Qi murmured to himself, his voice could be heard for a long time in the palace. In a flash, another 10 years passed. Once again, Jian Wushuang had finished absorbing the pure power from the demon cores that he had obtained. As for the ultimate divine power water droplet in his body, the 7th droplet had formed as he wished, and he was also very close to forming the 8th droplet. Read more chapter on novel full. This is exactly as I thought. I am already very close to forming the 8th ultimate divine power water droplet. Next, time to continue. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly. After that, he began his second hunt. In a split second, Jian Wushuang returned to the Crystal Palace again. It was the same hunting technique as before. Although Jian Wushuang did not obtain as many demon cores as before, he still obtained more than 280 of them. Once again, Jian Wushuang started to absorb the pure power within the demon cores. Just like that, Jian Wushuang repeated the cycle of hunting and absorbing. Although every hunt was extremely risky, Jian Wushuang's luck was considered not too bad. After many rounds of hunting, he obtained an innumerable number of demon cores. By absorbing these demon cores, they became the ultimate divine power in his body. Time passed by, and in the blink of an eye, 60 years had passed. During the 60 years, Jian Wushuang went on a hunt 5 times. Although he got his way all 5 times, the number of demon cores that he obtained decreased with every hunt. After all, although there were many star demons near the river, they were unable to withstand his repeated massacre. Thus their numbers naturally decreased. At that moment, when Jian Wushuang went out for a hunt, he could at most obtain over 100 demon cores on each hunt. Although there were fewer demon cores, it was still enough for Jian Wushuang. Within the Crystal Palace, Jian Wushuang was sitting down alone with his legs crossed, and he was slowly absorbing the pure power from a grade 3 green demon core in his hands. As he absorbed the pure power, the ultimate divine power in his body continued to rise. Moreover, at the start, his ultimate divine power was gathering madly. However, in the end, it formed a new ultimate divine power water droplet. At the moment that the ultimate divine power water droplet was formed, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes fiercely and stopped absorbing the demon core immediately. The 10th ultimate divine power water droplet has been formed. Jian Wushuang was over the moon. At that moment, there was a total of 10 ultimate divine power water droplets floating in his body quietly. When they were linked together, they formed a complete circle. Straight away after that, Jian Wushuang's body shook violently. At that moment, his body and his ultimate divine power started to undergo a transformation. Such a transformation was purely a transformation in terms of quality, where the divine power and body would rise to a new level. The transformation process was not complicated, and the time that it took was not very long either. After just a short while, the transformation was complete. As for Jian Wushuang, by just clenching both his fists tightly, frightening power burst forth abruptly and crushed the void easily. I have achieved Stage 2 Ultimate Real God. Chapter 1676 Soul Attack Divine Weapon. Chapter 1676 Soul Attack Divine Weapon. Stage 2 Ultimate Real God was equal to an eternal real god of an ordinary cultivator. However, the distance was vast. A Stage 1 Ultimate Real God himself, Jian Wushuang's divine power and divine body was at the level of chaotic real god. Then he reached Stage 2, and his divine power and divine body instantly jumped to almighty level. It was almighty, an existence on the top of the pyramid in eternal chaotic world. This is the power that an almighty possesses. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands and felt the strength in his hand. He wasn't sure how much stronger it was compared to his strength before. Strong, unbelievably strong. No wonder the Almighties could be high above. Merely the divine power and divine body itself is far beyond a chaotic real god. Jian Wushuang sighed. Of course, he was only at stage 2. Hence, his divine power and divine body was only the first level among the Almighties. The Almighties were also segregated into 3 different levels. The 3 levels had their own names. The first level was called Sir God. The second level was called Emperor God. The third level, also the highest level in eternal chaotic world, was Great Emperor. Among the 3 levels of Almighties, Sir God was naturally the most common, followed by Emperor God, and Great Emperor was the rarest. Like the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Gutong King and Gui King, the 2 7-star ancient gods were Sir God level. The Star Palace Master, Luozhen King and Guyu King, the 2 8-star ancient gods were Emperor God level. As for Great Emperor, Jian Wushuang had yet to see one, but he knew of Purple Moon Emperor, the master of Purple Moon Sanctuary. Of course, Purple Moon Sanctuary had a super existence of a Great Emperor. Jian Wushuang believed that the other sanctuaries should have super existences of Great Emperor level as well. However, including the entire Sanctuary Alliance, experts who were of Great Emperor level were definitely extremely few. Jian Wushuang's divine power and divine body then was at the level of an ordinary Sir God. Divine power and divine body are considerable compared to an ordinary Sir God. My disadvantage should be in comprehension of power of Heaven Way. If my comprehension of power of Heaven Way reaches the standard of the 7th level in Doctrine Palace, I could totally fight against an ordinary Almighty, Jian Wushuang muttered, and he was filled with excitement. Just then vroom. A shadow suddenly appeared next to Jian Wushuang. Lord Long Qi. Jian Wushuang bowed politely. You broke through. Long Qi stared at Jian Wushuang. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. From pure Yang initial success stage to great achievement stage, although it is just a small breakthrough, your divine power and divine body went through such a drastic change. Your cultivation methods are quite unusual. Even I have never seen such method. Real God Long Qi's voice was calm. Pure Yang initial success stage to great achievement stage that he had mentioned was actually referring to void real God turning into eternal real God. It was just that the way eternal chaotic world and ancient times referred to realms differently. I am an inverse cultivator, so my method is different, Jian Wushuang smiled. Inverse cultivator? I have never heard of it. Long Qi shook his head. There were no inverse cultivators back in ancient times. Don't bother about that. Young man, I suddenly recalled that there is something that you might be able to use, Long Qi suddenly said. At the same time, there was an item that popped into his hand. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at the item in Long Qi's hand. It was a dark gold rod. The dark gold rod was long but extremely thin. Under normal circumstances, an expert who was good with rods wouldn't opt for a thin long rod to be his weapon. Lord Long Qi, this is? Jian Wushuang looked confused. The dark gold rod was probably unsuitable for an expert who was good at rods, while Jian Wushuang was a sword cultivator. A rod wouldn't be of any use to him. This is Hongjun Divine Rod. Of course it is imitated, Long Qi said. An imitated divine weapon? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Hongjun Divine Rod wasn't an attack divine weapon but a soul attack divine weapon. Long Qi glanced at Jian Wushuang and threw the dark gold rod at Jian Wushuang at the same time. Jian Wushuang caught the rod automatically. He originally thought such a thin, dark gold rod shouldn't carry much weight, so he caught it with one hand. However, the moment he caught the dark gold rod, an unprecedented strength pressed onto his hand, and his palm instantly bent from the sudden pressure. His body too grew heavy, and he quickly extended his other hand. Using two hands at the same time, Jian Wushuang held the dark gold rod with difficulty. So heavy. Too heavy. My divine power is at the level of an almighty. In the end, I still find it strenuous to carry the rod with two hands. Jian Wushuang found it unbelievable. Just how strong was an almighty's divine power? Forget about the rod. He could break or lift up 100 million gene mountain easily. But then, the dark gold rod in his hand made him feel heavy and strained. Soul attack divine weapon? In other words, the rod was driven with soul power? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, you can give it a try now, Long Qi said. Jian Wushuang didn't hesitate, and instantly let his boundless soul power flow out to cover the dark gold rod. Then, Jian Wushuang slowly hit his palms and let his soul power carry the dark gold rod. He let it float in the air in silence. It's still very heavy, Jian Wushuang muttered. His soul power already reached the level of a chaotic real god. However, it was still strenuous to carry the dark gold rod before him. It was difficult to even carry it up. It would be total extravagant hope to manipulate the dark gold rod to kill his enemy. You try to control Hongjun divine rod to move forward, and see how far it can go, Long Qi said. Jian Wushuang nodded, and did as what Long Qi had instructed to control the dark gold rod to move forward. However, even though he gave his all, the dark gold rod was still trembling in balance, and traveling at an extremely slow speed. After a while, the dark gold rod only traveled forward for 100 meters, and the moment it reached 100 meters, bang! The dark gold rod directly landed on the crystal ground below, and made a tremendous noise. Luckily, the material of the crystal palace was unusual. Otherwise, with the weight of the dark gold rod, it could easily break the crystal ground. The further the distance of soul power, the more difficult it becomes to control it. My current limit is only to control Hongjun divine rod to travel for 100 meters, Jian Wushuang said bitterly. 100 meters barely. Long Qi muttered and waved his hand. Before Jian Wushuang, there was instantly a miniature gold turtle. Chapter 1677 Familiarization Training. Chapter 1677 Familiarization Training. This is... Jian Wushuang looked at the palm-sized golden dragon turtle with surprise. This is a gadget that I made. After explaining, Long Qi pointed in 4 different directions. With that, light beams rose from the 4 corners and became a seal instantly. The range that such a seal covered was not big, and it could only cover less than 1/3 of the big palace that Jian Wushuang was in. At the same time, another circular seal appeared around Jian Wushuang and covered him. From today, you will stay inside this circular seal and practice manipulation of the Hongjun divine rod. You can only leave this seal when you are able to destroy the little gadget that I have made, Long Qi said. You want me to manipulate the Hongjun divine rod to destroy this small dragon turtle? Jian Wushuang was stunned. However, he understood in the next moment that Long Qi wanted him to practice the control of the Hongjun divine rod, so that he would become more proficient in it. With a wave of Long Qi's hands, the Hongjun divine rod flew in front of Jian Wushuang. You may begin. After speaking, Long Qi disappeared. In the whole palace, only Jian Wushuang and the palm-sized golden dragon turtle remained. However, they were within 2 different seals. Let me have a try. Although Jian Wushuang did not understand Long Qi's intentions, he still followed Long Qi's instructions and started to practice using the Hongjun divine rod. Buzz under the control of Jian Wushuang's soul power, the tottering Hongjun divine rod started to move. However, its speed of movement was so slow that it was pathetic. When Jian Wushuang finally managed to control the Hongjun divine rod to move behind the golden dragon turtle, the golden dragon turtle realized its presence. Upon realizing the Hongjun divine rod's presence, its 4 legs moved at the same time, and it moved more than 200 meters away instantly. This speed! Jian Wushuang opened his eyes wide. The speed of the golden dragon turtle was not very fast. At the very least, it was considered very slow in Jian Wushuang's eyes. If not for Jian Wushuang being unable to leave the circular seal around him, he would be able to catch the golden dragon turtle easily by taking 1 step. However, no matter how slow the golden dragon turtle's speed was, it was still a lot faster than the Hongjun divine rod's movement, which was controlled by Jian Wushuang's soul power. It was at least 10 times faster. I should take it slow. I have only just begun to control the Hongjun divine rod, and I am not proficient in it. As such, its speed is slow. After I have become proficient in controlling it, its speed will definitely rise. In addition, the heavy weight of the Hongjun Divine Rod will serve as training for my soul power. As long as my soul power becomes more powerful, it will naturally become easier for me to control the Hongjun Divine Rod. Jian Wushuang was not discouraged. Instead, he continued to familiarize himself with controlling the Hongjun Divine Rod. The fact was indeed as Jian Wushuang had expected. At the start, it was indeed very difficult for him to control the Hongjun Divine Rod. The speed of movement of the Hongjun Divine Rod was extremely slow, and the Hongjun Divine Rod also shook while moving. However, as Jian Wushuang continued to practice controlling the Hongjun Divine Rod, he became more proficient in it. At the very least, the Hongjun Divine Rod was stable when it was moving. Next, Jian Wushuang needed to think of a way to increase the speed of movement of the Hongjun Divine Rod. Time passed. Jian Wushuang stayed within the big palace and practiced controlling the Hongjun Divine Rod repeatedly. As he practiced controlling, he gradually got used to the weight of the Hongjun Divine Rod. Putting it another way, it could also be said that his soul power had increased under the heavy pressure of the Hongjun Divine Rod. In just a short 3 years' time, Jian Wushuang could control the Hongjun Divine Rod stably. After that, another 11 years passed. In addition to the 3 years that he had used back then, he had used a total of 14 years. Within the big palace swoosh, the golden dragon turtle's 4 legs were crawling madly, and it was moving around the 1,000-meter range that the seal covered. Moreover, a long dark golden tail was following behind the golden dragon turtle, and it was moving at a slightly faster speed. Although the speed was only a slight bit faster, that was not even worth mentioning, it still closed the distance between the two of them. Finally, be destroyed. After a cry from Jian Wushuang, the dark golden Hongjun Divine Rod finally caught up with the golden dragon turtle, and it smashed the golden dragon turtle into pieces straight away. I have succeeded. Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened up, and his face was filled with happiness. Buzz Longqi's body appeared beside him quickly. After taking a glance at the golden dragon turtle which had been destroyed, he nodded his head. You have only used 14 years to achieve this stage. You are not too bad. After hearing what was said, Jian Wushuang gasped. Although it was only 14 years, he was certain how difficult the process had been during the 14 years. As the Hongjun Divine Rod was too heavy, it gave him a lot of pain when it exerted its pressure on his soul power. At present, Jian Wushuang still felt that it was a bit taxing on him to control the Hongjun Divine Rod. Lord Longqi, why did you make me familiarize myself with controlling the Hongjun Divine Rod for the past 14 years? Could it be that you wish for me to control the Hongjun Divine Rod to kill my foes in the future? Wouldn't that be too difficult for me? Jian Wushuang questioned with a frown. The Hongjun Divine Rod was special. Jian Wushuang could also feel that the power of the Hongjun Divine Rod was frightening. However, it was really too heavy. Although Jian Wushuang had familiarized himself with controlling the Hongjun Divine Rod for 14 years with great concentration, he could only barely control the Hongjun Divine Rod to catch up with the golden dragon turtle. However, the speed of movement of the Hongjun Divine Rod was still extremely slow to the point that it was equivalent to a snail in the eyes of universe gods. Even though such an attack technique had shocking power, it would still be useless as its speed was too slow, and it would be impossible to even touch the enemies. Even if my soul power were to make a huge breakthrough in the future to achieve the level of an almighty, I would probably still be unable to control the Hongjun Divine Rod to fight, Jian Wushuang said. Longqi naturally understood Jian Wushuang. With a wave of his hands, he kept the Hongjun Divine Rod, and his eyes looked down at Jian Wushuang. I merely lent you the Hongjun Divine Rod for you to familiarize yourself with controlling it. As for what I really want to give you, it's this. With a flip of his hands, a sword-type weapon which had an extremely peculiar shape appeared in front of Jian Wushuang at once. A sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes moved. What Longqi had taken out was indeed a sword. However, the sword was strange. The whole sword was completely gold in color, and its length was 4 Chinese feet. However, The most important thing was that there was no handle. That's right. The sword only had a sword blade and no sword handle. Its two ends were extremely sharp, and their edges were glowing with a cold light. Similarly, the blade of the sword was very thin, just like the Hongjun divine rod from before. This is the Hongjun golden sword. Of course, it is only an imitation. As for its use, it is similar to the Hongjun divine rod. Since you have already learnt how to control the Hongjun divine rod, you can now try to control the Hongjun golden sword. Long Qi tossed the Hongjun golden sword toward Jian Wushuang. With the experience of catching the Hongjun divine rod from before, Jian Wushuang had learnt to be smart, and he caught the Hongjun golden sword with both his hands at the same time. However, when he caught the Hongjun golden sword, his expression changed. Chapter 1678, Hongjun Golden Sword. Chapter 1678, Hongjun Golden Sword. Hongjun Golden Sword is so light. Jian Wushuang carried Hongjun Golden Sword with one hand. Although he found it heavy, it was so vastly different compared to Hongjun Divine Rod. Then, he immediately drove his soul power to cover Hongjun Golden Sword, and controlled it like he controlled Hongjun Divine Rod. In the end, Hongjun Golden Sword instantly turned into a ray of golden light and flew out. Its speed was 12 times faster than Hongjun Divine Rod. This, Jian Wushuang was shocked. Hongjun Golden Sword is similar to Hongjun Divine Rod, although they are divine weapons that are driven with soul power. The difference is that Hongjun Divine Rod focuses on momentum and focuses on power. Hence, it is very heavy, and it is very difficult to control. On the other hand, Hongjun Golden Sword leans towards speed and sharpness. It relies on the sword blade and the tip of the sword to kill your opponent. As a result, the weight is naturally much lighter and much easier to control. Long Qi looked at Jian Wushuang. Previously, I let you get used to controlling Hongjun Divine Rod for you to familiarize yourself with the manipulation method of soul power, also to enhance your soul strength. You familiarized and controlled it for 14 years. And you can barely control Hongjun Divine Rod. Hence, it is naturally much easier to control Hongjun Golden Sword. I see. Jian Wushuang understood. It was true. If Long Qi were to pass him Hongjun Golden Sword right at the beginning, he could familiarize himself with it. But due to the difference in weight, he definitely wouldn't feel as significantly at ease when he was controlling Hongjun Golden Sword after 14 years of familiarizing himself with it and controlling it. Yes, he was at ease. Just like when a commoner carried stones. At first, he would be carrying a few hundred jin stone, and he would get used to the weight. One day, if he suddenly went to carry a dozen jin stone, he would naturally feel at ease. Jian Wushuang was in that situation. Besides, the way you control Hongjun Golden Sword is merely the simplest soul control, but Hongjun Golden Sword is performed via soul power in collaboration with Power of Heaven Wei. Long Qi took out a token backhandedly. In this token, it recorded Hongjun Golden Sword's first form of skill. Read it carefully. Jian Wushuang took the token and started browsing through. As he read, his pupils contracted in shock. Spacetime. Hongjun Golden Sword is performed using spacetime power. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but revealed a thrilled expression. Yes, Hongjun Golden Sword was performed via soul power in flawless collaboration with spacetime doctrine. It was mainly focusing on spacetime power, and soul power was only a means to control it. Besides, not only spacetime doctrine, but also reincarnation doctrine that Jian Wushuang comprehended, could also be merged into Hongjun Golden Sword to enhance the power of Hongjun Golden Sword. The skill recorded in the token was the method to perform Hongjun Golden Sword perfectly. With my current soul strength, relying on merely soul to drive Hongjun Golden Sword, the speed isn't fast. However, with this skill to merge spacetime power flawlessly into Hongjun Golden Sword, Jian Wushuang was getting excited from the thought of it. The first form of Hongjun Golden Sword had a total of 9 levels. You can control an extra Hongjun Golden Sword when you level up. So, I prepared a total of 9 Hongjun Golden Sword for you, Long Qi said. Then he took out another 8 Hongjun Golden Swords that looked identical. These 9 Hongjun golden swords are for you. You can take your time to familiarize yourself with it, and control it at your own pace. Then, Long Qi's body turned illusionary, and vanished into thin air before Jian Wushuang again. Jian Wushuang put the 8 Hongjun golden swords into Qian Kuan ring, and he was confused. He could tell that Hongjun golden sword was unusual. Any one of them should be a priceless treasure, just like treasures that Jian Wushuang carried. Besides River Mountain map, he reckoned there shouldn't be any treasure that could be compared favorably with Hongjun golden sword. It was hard to even say if Blood Mountain sword could be compared favorably. Such treasures, Long Qi took out 9 in one go and gave them to him as a gift straightaway. Why was Long Qi treating him so well out of a sudden? One should know that Long Qi was very cold to him previously. He didn't even care if he was dead or alive, and let him run his own course. But he suddenly took out treasures like Hongjun golden sword for him, and purposely taught him how to use it. Jian Wushuang felt that he didn't do anything. He had merely broken through and become a stage 2 ultimate real god. Wasn't the change of his attitude too much? Whatever. In short, Hongjun golden sword is no doubt a treasure to me. With it, my power definitely could increase by a few levels. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. Jian Wushuang immediately started to drive Hongjun golden sword according to the recorded skill. In the hall, swoosh, a gold flowing light lit up, and the very end of the void in the hall, which was at least a dozen miles away from Jian Wushuang, suddenly cracked. This speed is so fast. Although he was mentally prepared, Jian Wushuang still got a school when he saw the speed when Hongjun golden sword launched. The speed was too fast. It was even faster when he gave his all to perform martial art motion. The power was also terrifyingly shocking too. It was only the first time Jian Wushuang had controlled Hongjun golden sword using space-time power. Continue to familiarize. Jian Wushuang was excited, and he immediately started to practice Hongjun golden sword. In the hall, there were constantly gold flowing lights flashing, but never the substantial form of the gold flowing light. In the blink of an eye, it had been 20 years. In 20 years, Jian Wushuang had been familiarizing himself to perform with Hongjun golden sword. He practiced frequently every day. For the past 20 years, he didn't know how many times he had practiced. From the practice, the first level of Hongjun golden sword in the first form, which was also the first Hongjun golden sword, had finally been performed completely. His soul power, comprehension of space-time doctrine, and comprehension of reincarnation doctrine were merged into Hongjun golden sword. When he wielded Hongjun golden sword, it was already extremely terrifying. I have almost mastered the first Hongjun golden sword, but I mostly practice alone. Next, I should bring Hongjun golden sword to an actual fight. Jian Wushuang smiled. In the dark region, the opponent the Jian Wushuang want to fight against was naturally the star demons. Jian Wushuang immediately entered the Black River through the space tunnel. Then, he didn't hide in the river and massacre the star demons, using River Mountain map, but he instantly plunged from the water and landed on the shore. Back when Jian Wushuang was chased to the Black River, the number of the surrounding star demon had been terrifying. However, after Jian Wushuang's 6 massacres in the past 100 years, the remaining star demons were obviously fewer. Chapter 1679 Massacre. Chapter 1679 Massacre. Atop the dark land, there were a few star demons scattered about. When Jian Wushuang spread his soul power out wantonly, he only saw the existence of hundreds of star demons, and there were less than 1,000 of them. In actual fact, hundreds of star demons were already a lot. However, it was still considered very few compared to the thousands of star demons, which were gathered there at the very start. When Jian Wushuang appeared on the ground, the scattered star demons looked toward him immediately. Human cultivator. Kill. Without hesitation, the hundreds of star demons charged toward Jian Wushuang, and their violent auras rose. If it were back then when he had not made a breakthrough to stage 2 ultimate real god yet, Jian Wushuang would definitely choose to escape without hesitation if he were to see such a number of star demons charging toward him. However, at present, Jian Wushuang crossed his hands and stood at his position calmly. As he looked at the star demons which were storming toward him from all directions, he wore an indifferent smile. Buzz! A golden light floated beside Jian Wushuang. It was the Hongjun golden sword. At that moment, tens of star demons with unequal abilities appeared beside him. Let me see how strong the true power of the Hongjun golden sword is. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with excitement. Swish! A golden ray of light moved fiercely. Although the golden ray of light had only just appeared, it had already pierced through the bodies of tens of star demons nearby. Swish! 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 Soft sounds could be heard. As for the tens of star demons, which included a three-horned green star demon, they were killed right away without even being able to give a horrible shriek. There was no room for them to struggle. After seeing that, Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened up at once. It should be known that a three-horned green star demon could rival a top chaotic real god of the human cultivators. However, there was also no room for it to struggle. Moreover, the most important thing was that Jian Wushuang had held back some of his divine power. I have merely used divine power that is comparable to that of a normal chaotic real god, and it is similar to the time before I made a breakthrough. However, by relying on the Hongjun golden sword, I can kill green star demons instantly, Jian Wushuang murmured, and he was extremely excited. Swoosh! 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 A great number of star demons besieged Jian Wushuang crazily. However, Jian Wushuang stood still and did not move at all. Just like before, he was only controlling the Hongjun golden sword. The speed of the Hongjun golden sword was exceptionally fast, and it pierced through the bodies of the star demons easily. Moreover, the star demons could not even react to it. Even after some time, not even one star demon was able to get near to Jian Wushuang. As for those that came close to him, there was always a small distance between them and Jian Wushuang. Hence, they were killed by the Hongjun golden sword mercilessly. For this period of time, more than half of the hundreds of star demons had been killed by the Hongjun golden sword that was controlled by Jian Wushuang. The speed of the massacre using the Hongjun golden sword is too fast, Jian Wushuang muttered. He could only control one Hongjun golden sword nimbly. If he were to achieve the peak of the first stage of the Hongjun golden sword, where he could control 9 Hongjun golden swords, he would become even more frightening during the massacre. Just then a crimson, glittering light appeared vigorously. A crimson star demon? Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. Under the control of his soul power, the Hongjun golden sword turned around fiercely and headed toward the crimson star demon ruthlessly, like a shooting star. A crimson star demon could rival human experts, who were in the real god ranking list, and its ability to react was also stronger than the other star demons. When the Hongjun golden sword transformed into a golden shooting star and headed over, the crimson star demon swung its sharp claws with lightning speed. When both of them clashed, the crimson star demon was sent flying, and it could be faintly seen that its palm was bleeding. Haha! Even by using chaotic real god-level divine power to control the Hongjun golden sword, I can still send the crimson star demon flying. Jian Wushuang's laughter became louder. Next, let me try unleashing all my divine power. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with a shrill light, and the Hongjun golden sword transformed golden shooting star was shot out again. This time round, the golden shooting star's speed and power were obviously greater than before. The Hongjun golden sword clashed with the crimson star demon head-on again. Bam! A loud sound could be heard, and the whole arm of the crimson star demon was blown into pieces by the impact. After that, the power of the Hongjun golden sword remained unchanged, and it continued to pierce the body of the crimson star demon. The crimson star demon was killed straight away. By controlling it with all my divine power, the crimson star demon cannot even take one blow. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly. He could already tell back then that the Hongjun golden sword was extremely powerful, and it could raise his abilities greatly. However, after mastering it for real, he knew that he was still underestimating the Hongjun Golden Sword. Let's continue the massacre. Jian Wushuang laughed. As the Hongjun Golden Sword moved around, it pierced through the bodies of the star demons easily. Even Crimson Star demons were considered weak in front of the Hongjun Golden Sword. Although there were many normal three-horned star demons, as well as two-horned and one-horned star demons, they were completely helpless in the face of the Hongjun Golden Sword's massacre. In no time, the hundreds of star demons which were near the Dark River were all massacred by Jian Wushuang, and only one of them remained. The last star demon was a three-horned Crimson Star demon. Jian Wushuang left this three-horned Crimson Star demon to the end, as he had felt something strong within its body. Jian Wushuang knew that the Blood Mountain sword that he had lost in this piece of land back then was with this three-horned Crimson Star demon. Moreover, there was a high possibility of it being in its stomach. Star demons had always liked to eat. Moreover, they liked to eat anything, be it human cultivators or their treasures, which included various kinds of weapons. They would be able to swallow them straight away. This was also the same for their fellow comrades. For example, during the 6 massacres by Jian Wushuang back then, where he had killed a huge number of star demons, he did not manage to get many of the demon cores. However, when he came for his next massacre, those demon cores had already disappeared, and it was obvious that they had been eaten by the other star demons. As for the Blood Mountain sword that Jian Wushuang had lost in the Dark Region, it was naturally eaten by the three-horned Crimson Star demon in front of him. While standing in front of the three-horned Crimson Star demon, Jian Wushuang could feel the shocking sword essence and anger from the body of the three-horned Crimson Star demon. Die! Jian Wushuang did not hesitate, and he activated the Hongjun Golden Sword immediately. By controlling it with his full power, the Hongjun Golden Sword stabbed the body of the three-horned Crimson Star demon. The three-horned Crimson Star demon was killed on the spot. After its body was destroyed, what appeared at the same time as its demon core was a long sword which was shaking madly and releasing an infinite amount of sword essence. The sword was Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword. Little thing, please come over. With a wave of Jian Wushuang's hands, the Blood Mountain sword flew over immediately, and it was caught by Jian Wushuang tightly. Chapter 1680 Leave. Chapter 1680 Leave. Oh, you even know to blame me? Jian Wushuang's smile spread wider. Bloodsword Mountain was an embryo sword, and it was very intelligent. Its sword soul was exactly like a child. Previously, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to lose it in order to make an escape. In the end, it was eaten by a Crimson Star demon. It was in the Crimson Star demon's mouth for 100 years, so it of course was upset. All right, I wouldn't lose you again, Jian Wushuang reassured it. As he reassured it, Jian Wushuang collected the surrounding demon cores. The massacre was the most complete massacre. The star demons surrounding the river were killed, and he naturally received a lot of demon cores. After he collected them, Jian Wushuang returned to the independent space. Lord Longqi. Jian Wushuang bowed politely, and the unbelievable mountain before him. The mountain didn't move an inch, but the weird elderly with the golden tail, that Longqi, had taken the form of suddenly appeared before Jian Wushuang. What's the matter? Longqi looked at Jian Wushuang. I'm here to bid farewell to you, Lord Longqi, Jian Wushuang said. Oh, you're ready to leave? Longqi sounded cold as usual. Yes, Jian Wushuang smiled. Thank you for taking care of me all this time, Lord Longqi. Don't mention it. I only helped you because of your connection with 7-Star Black Sect. Longqi waved his hand, and then exhorted. Jian Wushuang, remember this. Do not reveal this place where Master is in a deep sleep after you left. It'd be best if you do not bring up whatever you come across here to another person. I do not want anyone to come and disturb Master's sleep. I will remember this. Jian Wushuang nodded solemnly. Then he asked, Oh yeah, regarding Hongjun Golden Sword. According to what Lord Longqi said, I only received the skill for the first form of Hongjun Golden Sword. Is there a second form? A second form? Of course. However, only the real Hongjun Golden Sword could perform it. not the 9 imitation swords that I have given to you. I do not have the real Hongjun golden sword. So, even if I give you the skill of the second form, you won't be able to use it, Long Qi said. I see. Jian Wushuang understood. If so, I shall leave. Go ahead, Long Qi waved. Jian Wushuang bowed at Long Qi again. At the same time, he bowed at the lofty crystal palace as well. Then he left through the space tunnel. When he arrived at the other end of the space tunnel, which was at the bottom of the Black River, Jian Wushuang realized that the tunnel had already vanished. Obviously, Lord Long Qi had closed the space tunnel. In the future, even Jian Wushuang might not be able to return to the independent space. The independent space belongs to the master of Long Qi. It is where the ancient super expert is sleeping, and no one knows when the superb existence is going to wake up. He might wake up very soon, but he might not even wake up after I pass away, after the eternal chaotic world collapses, and after it enters a brand new era, Jian Wushuang muttered. Regardless, I received a great opportunity in the independent space. I also found out some secrets in ancient times. I am content. In the future, unless my power reaches the level of the experts in ancient times, or I find out a method to wake the experts, I definitely will not step foot here again. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and turned to leave. The core region of 8th layer, the dark region. The Black River that Jian Wushuang was in was actually not the deepest place in dark region. It was still considered to be the border. It wasn't far outside of the dark region. Previously, due to the hindrance of star demons, Jian Wushuang couldn't leave even though he knew the way to exit. But then the star demons that were after Jian Wushuang were already massacred. Even if there were some remaining, none would be able to stop Jian Wushuang. On the contrary, they might be killed by Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang returned according to the route he had used to enter the dark region. He didn't run into any hindrances along the way. Very soon, Jian Wushuang walked out of the dark region. I'm finally out. Looking at the void where the black fog was obviously much thinner, Jian Wushuang stretched his body as he sighed emotionally. Real God Ziyi, I forced you into a desperate situation back then. You had no choice but to run into the dark region and explode yourself to startled star demons to come after me. Your only goal was for us to meet our deaths together. Even as an enemy, your method is simply admirable. If I were to be in the same desperate situation, I might do the same thing that you did. It's a pity that you got dealt a bad hand. Not only did you fail to bring our deaths together, you also led me to more opportunities. Speaking of which, I really have to thank you. Jian Wushuang smiled. If real God Ziyi hadn't led him to the dark region, he definitely wouldn't have broken through and become a stage 2 ultimate real god so soon. Nor would he find the sleeping place of Lord Long Qi's master. Also, he wouldn't find out about 7-star Black Sect, and he wouldn't have received so many opportunities. For instance, comprehension of 7-star picture and Hongjun Golden Sword. Both were great opportunities. Of course, Jian Wushuang had to thank real God Ziyi. It was a pity that real God Ziyi had died so soon. Back when real God Ziyi and I went into the dark region, real God Ziyi died, and I lost contact with the lineage of Star entirely. The experts in lineage of Star must be worried sick, Jian Wushuang muttered, and he immediately took out a token. Hall Master Yuan, how do you do? Jian Wushuang reported to Hall Master Yuan about his safety. Jian Wushuang? Finally, we have news from you. I thought you died. Hall Master Yuan immediately replied, and his voice couldn't conceal his excitement. Just as Jian Wushuang had expected, when Jian Wushuang and real God Ziyi lost contact with the outside world, both lineage of Star and Soaring Heaven King Palace had been anxious. Especially lineage of Star, they were especially anxious. After all, Jian Wushuang was the top genius in the history of lineage of Star. As long as he didn't die, he would be at the level of real God Wu Bei at the weakest. One could well imagine his importance. As for real God Ziyi, he was merely a top chaotic real god. There were quite a few chaotic real gods like him soaring Heaven King Palace. Although there would be heartache if they lost him, it wouldn't be too huge of a loss to soaring Heaven King Palace overall. My life is tough. How can I die so easily? Jian Wushuang joked. Tell me what happened. Where's real God Ziyi? Hall Master Yuan asked. Chapter 1681, Jian Wushuang and Soaring Heaven King Palace. Chapter 1681, Jian Wushuang and Soaring Heaven King Palace. Real God Ziyi died long ago. I killed him. However, he was pretty good. Before he died, he cornered me into a desperate situation, and the space that I was in was sealed off from the outside world entirely. I couldn't send any message for you to come and rescue me, but I could rely on my own capabilities. However, I am lucky enough to be able to survive and escape from a desperate situation alive. Jian Wushuang smiled. Is that so? Hall Master Yuan creased his eyebrows. He knew Jian Wushuang's character well. If even Jian Wushuang had said it was a desperate situation, the encounter must be beyond imagination. Regardless, it's great that you managed to escape. I, and all experts from Lineage of Star, can finally let out a breath of relief. Hall Master Yuan smiled. Oh yeah, where are you exactly? Let me send the experts from Lineage of Star over immediately to escort you back. Escort? Jian Wushuang refused. There's no need. I can come back on my own. There's no need? Jian Wushuang, I'm afraid you do not know what kind of situation you are in now. Hall Master Yuan smiled faintly. Why? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but ask. 100 years ago, when you were after real God Ziyi in the core region, it spread across wildfire and it stirred a hubbub. Many higher-ups in Soaring Heaven King Palace were notified, especially when you and real God Ziyi disappeared. Soaring Heaven King Palace was furious too. They immediately sent many experts to the 8th layer to search for you and real God Ziyi. They continued to do that for 100 years and they never stopped. On the contrary, Soaring Heaven King Palace sent more and more experts. They even paid a great price to hire some top chaotic real gods. Their intentions are, firstly, they had a string of hope that real God Ziyi might not have been dead. Secondly, to kill me? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. I'm glad you know that. From the hunt back then, real God Ziyi should be dead from the desperate situation. However, although you were lost, you were most likely not dead. Soaring Heaven King Palace has been barbaric all this while. You continuously killed 2 of their chaotic real gods. Why would they let you off the hook? Hall Master Yuan smirked coldly. Hence, it's best that you find a place to hide for now, and wait until the experts from Lineage of Star arrive. Over the years, we of Lineage of Star have also sent many experts to the 8th layer to look for you. Although not as many as Soaring Heaven King Palace. As long as they are with you, it shouldn't be that easy for Soaring Heaven King Palace to kill you. I see. Jian Wushuang smiled. He understood what Hall Master Yuan meant, but he replied with a smile. Hall Master Yuan, you don't have to go through the trouble. I can return on my own. Jian Wushuang you. Hall Master Yuan was shocked. Hall Master Yuan, I have something that I have yet to tell you. During the time when I was in a desperate situation, I broke through and became an eternal real god. Jian Wushuang said. Broke through? Hall Master Yuan was surprised. He knew that it didn't take long for Jian Wushuang to break through from universe god to void real god. It was at most a few hundred years. In such a short period, he broke through from being a void real god to become an eternal real god. How did he progress so quickly? Jian Wushuang, are you really confident? Hall Master Yuan was uncertain. Of course, the current me is not someone who could be dealt with so easily, Jian Wushuang said confidently. If so, alright then. However, if you were to fight with the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace, I would still let the surrounding experts from Lineage of Star move in your direction, Hall Master Yuan said. Sure, Jian Wushuang nodded. After texting with Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang let out a breath. He suddenly looked at the end of the boundless dark void. Soaring Heaven King Palace, I hoped that you'd be wiser. Otherwise, there was boundless chill soaring in Jian Wushuang's eyes. In the boundless dark void, there was cold aura. In a dark land, there were over 20 star demons gathered. Suddenly, there was a silver flowing light that plunged into the star demons like a bolt of lightning. Then a massacre took place. Over 20 star demons were wiped out by the silver flowing light in an instant. The silver flowing light dispersed and revealed a cold-looking elder in silver armor. There was dim light in the cold-looking elder's eyes. He had a smile plastered across his face, but his smile was malicious. "Shirgu, you are pretty carefree. You have the intention to kill these star demons." A red-robed figure appeared next to the cold-looking elder from nowhere. The red-robed figure belonged to a handsome young man. The two of them were top chaotic real gods. "Hee, we have been searching for more than 100 years, but we have never seen real god Ziyi and Jian Wushuang. I reckon that both of them already met death together. It would be a waste of time if we continued to search for them. I might as well spend some time on hunting star demons. The demon cores are good," the cold-looking elder said. "Humph. Don't forget that Soaring Heaven King Palace hired you at a great price. It's not right for you to hunt star demons." The red-robed handsome man's voice was cold. "Hee, don't worry. Only hunting a few star demons won't interrupt our main goal," the elder said. The red-robed handsome man couldn't say anything more. Just then, the cold-looking elder's face suddenly grew solemn. "Someone's here." The red-robed handsome man immediately noticed, and his eyes looked to the void afar at the first instant. There was a figure plunging over slowly. He looked handsome and extremely young. He was in crimson robe, and there was a sword on his back. There was no power, but he let out the aura of an expert at all times. The originally carefree cold-looking elder and the red-robed handsome man saw the incomer, and their eyes dilated in shock. "This outfit, this appearance. It's Jian Wushuang. It's him. Hall Master, I found Jian Wushuang. He's alive. He is near me," the red-robed handsome man immediately exclaimed in surprise. At the same time, he instantly sent a message to Soaring Heaven King Palace. "We finally found him and happened to be found by us." The cold-looking elder looked delighted. "Let's go." The red-robed handsome man's eyes shimmered with joy. At the very next moment, the two figures plunged out and instantly appeared in the void before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, who was traveling forward, could feel the two of them approaching, and he immediately stopped his steps and looked up. "So fast." Jian Wushuang smirked and formed a malicious smile. "Jian Wushuang, I finally found you." The red-robed handsome man and the cold-looking elder glared at Jian Wushuang, and their eyes boiled with rage. Chapter 1682 Show Dignity. Chapter 1682 Show Dignity. One is real god Cheng Tian from Soaring Heaven King Palace. As for the other one, Jian Wushuang looked at the other cold-looking elder and squinted his eyes. "The resentment between Soaring Heaven King Palace and I have nothing to do with you, real god Shirgu." "Hee, it really had nothing to do with me. However, Soaring Heaven King Palace paid a great price, and I am really interested in you, an inverse cultivator." The cold-looking real god Shirgu smiled maliciously. "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. "It seems that the fight between Soaring Heaven King Palace and I is inevitable regardless." "That's funny. You killed two chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace. For that incident alone you deserve to die." The red-robed handsome man, real god Cheng Tian, roared. "I deserve to die. I will wait then." Jian Wushuang didn't care. As he spoke, there was a fierce aura that soared from his body. Real god Cheng Tian's face changed. "Something's not right." "Why?" Real god Shirgu asked. "His aura, it's an aura that an eternal real god would have. Jian Wushuang already broke through and became an eternal real god." Real god Cheng Tian exclaimed in surprise. "What?" Real god Shirgu was shocked too. From what they knew, Jian Wushuang had only broken through and become a void real god not too long ago. Just how many years had it been since he had already reached the level of eternal real god? Previously, he was only a void real god, and he could kill real god Ziyi. Now that he has broken through again, his power has definitely increased tremendously. He might be able to compare favorably with experts on real god ranking list. With just the two of us, we can't do anything about him. Let us retreat for now. When the other experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace arrive, hem him in and kill him together, real god Cheng Tian said. Real God Shirgu looked unhappy. Although he was upset, he nodded heavily. He wasn't stupid either, and he wouldn't make fun of his own life. Retreat! The two top chaotic real god immediately retreated, and they obviously wanted to give up the idea to fight Jian Wushuang. But just as they turned and wanted to leave, the two of you don't need to run. A cold voice suddenly resounded in their heads. Real God Cheng Tian and Real God Shirgu looked at everything in front of them in shock. They saw that Jian Wushuang, who was originally far away from them, had taken one leap and appeared in front of them like a bolt of lightning, leaving countless shadows behind him. This speed, Real God Cheng Tian and Real God Shirgu were astonished. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang lifted his hand. He didn't draw his sword but merely punched them. Rumble! It was a simple punch, but it contained an extremely terrifying diving power, and it continued to magnify itself in front of them. The divine power alone made the two top chaotic real gods quiver in fear. There was an unprecedented terror in their eyes, and they tried their best to withstand it. Then, they made a final struggle and performed their attacks, but they were still suppressed by the punch. In the end, they could only watch as Jian Wushuang's fist swung at them. Hall Master, Jian Wushuang. Real God Cheng Tian didn't even send one a complete message in time. Bang! Bang! The fist was magnified by a few folds. Then, it landed on both Real God Cheng Tian and Real God Shirgu's heads at the same time. Instantly both of their heads popped. The two top chaotic real god instantly died. Divine power comparable favorably with an almighty. It's pretty easy to kill an ordinary chaotic real god. Jian Wushuang looked at the two cold dead bodies that fell as a smile spread across his face. He didn't use any skill on purpose with the earlier punch, merely his own divine power. He had merely suppressed them using his divine power, and the two top chaotic real gods had been eliminated. That was the huge difference in power between an almighty and a chaotic real god. As the two real gods saw me, I was definite that they sent my location to Soaring Heaven King Palace. It seems that in no time, there'll be other experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace here soon. Jian Wushuang smiled as he took all the treasures from the two real gods into his own Qian Kuan ring. Soaring Heaven King Palace, come on! Soaring Heaven King Palace, in a lofty palace. Real God Cheng Tian sent a message. They saw Jian Wushuang. Soaring Heaven King Palace Master. That's great. I finally found that son of a bitch. They found Jian Wushuang. How about Ziyi? The higher-ups of Soaring Heaven King Palace in the hall became anxious. Real God Cheng Tian only saw Jian Wushuang, but didn't see Ziyi around. If I'm not mistaken, Ziyi should have passed. A golden-robed man who looked cold raged furiously. Jian Wushuang killed two chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Regardless, he has to die. Send down my command. All experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace must immediately rush to where Real God Cheng Tian is. Yes, there was someone who took the order immediately to send down his command. Hold on. The golden-robed man suddenly waved, and there was anger in his eyes. He had received the incomplete message that Real God Cheng Tian had sent before he had died. Real God Cheng Tian has already died. Besides, Real God Shirgu, who was with him in the 8th lair, should be dead too, the golden-robed man said in a low voice. What? The higher-ups of Soaring Heaven King Palace, who were standing at a lower platform, were angry. Real God Cheng Tian and Real God Shirgu were both top chaotic real gods. With the two of them joining forces, unless one was an expert that possessed fighting power of an expert on real god ranking list, it would definitely be impossible for him to kill two of them in such a short period of time. Jian Wushuang possibly already possesses the fighting power of one on the real god ranking list. Maybe he has other experts around him who have the fighting power of one on the real god ranking list. The golden-robed man said coldly. Send my command down. Tell all experts of Soaring Heaven King Palace to not take action recklessly before gathering enough power. Do not fight with Jian Wushuang. Even if Jian Wushuang takes the initiative to find them, try to avoid him. Wait until we gather a formation that is sufficient to kill him. Then we will hem him in. Also, tell Han Quan to return from the 6th lair and head over to the 8th lair together to kill Jian Wushuang. And tell them that from real God Guing to real God Ziyi, and now real God Cheng Tian, we Soaring Heaven King Palace has 3 chaotic real gods that died in Jian Wushuang's hands. It is a great humiliation to Soaring Heaven King Palace. If Jian Wushuang doesn't die, where will Soaring Heaven King Palace's dignity be? Hence, in the next fight, not only should we kill Jian Wushuang, we also have to show our dignity. We have to let Sanctuary Alliance, and all forces in Eternal Chaotic World, know what is the outcome of offending Soaring Heaven King Palace. In the fight, no matter what kind of obstacle we run into, with the involvement of experts from Lineage of Star, we should hold no scruples and kill everyone. Chapter 1683 Great Movement. Chapter 1683 Great Movement. Soaring Heaven King Palace Master sent down his command, and it instantly stirred up a great commotion in Soaring Heaven King Palace. Especially the last part of Soaring Heaven King Palace's speech. Regardless of the intervention, have no scruples, kill them all. He had even highlighted Lineage of Star in his command. Soaring Heaven King Palace obviously wanted to establish their dignity in the fight. As they intended to do so, they had to show everyone. Hence, they had sent the command without covering up and spread it directly. 1. It spread to Thunderbolt Island, as well as the entire Sanctuary Alliance. It instantly caused a hubbub in Sanctuary Alliance. To kill the number 1 genius from Lineage of Star without having any scruples? Even if the experts from Lineage of Star get involved, kill them all? Soaring Heaven King Palace is trying to start a fight with Lineage of Star? They are definitely starting a fight. Jian Wushuang is Lineage of Star's precious one. Lineage of Star wouldn't let anything happen to him. They definitely will send a bunch of experts to rescue him. By then, they definitely would fight with Soaring Heaven King Palace directly. Soaring Heaven King Palace is very strong. However, ever since Lineage of Star got the 2 white blaze fruit trees, their foundation and power haven't been much weaker than Soaring Heaven King Palace's. If the 2 overlords were to fight with one another, TSK, that'd be interesting. Countless top experts from all forces of Sanctuary Alliance found out about the news as well. Everyone was looking forward to the fight. Among Sanctuary Alliance, there were great forces that had gotten into war because of their disputes. It was very common. There were even times when forces had been exterminated from it. All forces in Sanctuary Alliance were used to it since long ago. Now they were just watching the 2 overlords. In the core region of the 8th lair. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. As soon as the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace, who were scattered around the core region looking for Jian Wushuang, received the command, they rushed over to the location of real God Cheng Tian immediately. Plus, they were informed about real God Cheng Tian and real God Shirgu's deaths. Hence, they were taking action in groups very cautiously. In the void, there were 3 figures plunging forward. The 3 of them were top chaotic real gods. There was one that had come from Soaring Heaven King Palace. As for the other 2, they were solo experts hired by Soaring Heaven King Palace. In Eternal Chaotic World, there were many powerful solo experts who were unafraid of all forces. As long as the price offered was high enough, they wouldn't even care if they had to offend other major forces. After all, it wouldn't be that easy if the major forces wanted to kill them as well. Then, in order to kill Jian Wushuang, Soaring Heaven King Palace had hired more than 10 solo experts. The 3 people who were plunging forward at high speed suddenly stopped. A gray-robed old lady, who was in the middle, turned to look in the dark void behind. I wonder who are the few that have been tailing the 3 of us? What's the purpose? The gray-robed old lady looked fragile, but her voice was bright and contained power that spread in all directions. Then, the experts who followed the 3 of them never revealed themselves, but there was a burst of laughter. Old monster Wuxia, we don't want to do anything. We just want to watch. After all, we don't know where Jian Wushuang is. We can only find him if we follow you. Yeah, go ahead with yours. We will not get involved in the fight between you and Lineage of Star. A fight between Soaring Heaven King Palace and Lineage of Star. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. We don't want to miss it. The gray-robed old lady squinted her eyes when she heard the laughter. If everyone is really here to watch, go ahead and follow us. Let me say this first. If any of you think of getting involved when the fight starts, Soaring Heaven King Palace won't let any of you off the hook, the gray-robed old lady said. Then she turned to continue to rush her journey. Wuxia, wouldn't it be too great of a move that Soaring Heaven King Palace is pulling? An expert who was flying alongside the gray-robed lady asked casually. Soaring Heaven King Palace is trying to show dignity. Naturally, the more spectators the merrier, the other person said with a smirk. Stop joking. We are nearing the location of Jian Wushuang. By then, we'll rely heavily on the two of you, the gray-robed old lady said. Don't you worry about it. As the two of us agreed to help Soaring Heaven King Palace, we will naturally give our best shot. The two of them agreed heartily. Then, Soaring Heaven King Palace took the initiative to attack, and it spread like wildfire in Sanctuary Alliance. Those experts who were wandering in the 8th flare naturally knew about it too. Hence, they purposely rushed over as well. Plus, there were many pairs of eyes in Sanctuary Alliance who were watching the upcoming fight closely. The fight could be said to be a public attraction. In boundless darkness, there was a barren land with no signs of life. Jian Wushuang didn't opt to plunge into the void, but walked step by step on the land. He walked very slowly. It had been a few days since he had killed real god Cheng Tian and real god Shirgu. Over the past few days, he had walked for less than 10,000 miles. It was as though he didn't move at all, but was waiting for strong opponents to come by. In actual fact, he was really waiting for the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Jian Wushuang, my friend, the movement that you have caused is extraordinary. There was an expert from Soaring Heaven King Palace who sent me a message earlier. They offered me a great price for me to assist them to kill you. Honestly, Soaring Heaven King Palace lives up to their reputation as a top major force. They were very generous in their offer. Even I was very tempted. Haha, brother Peng Hua, did you agree with them? Jian Wushuang and real god Peng Hua were chatting casually. Don't you know me yet? I never make trouble with anyone else. Even if there are benefits, I would never offend anyone for no reason. Plus, we are friends to begin with. Why would I fight with you for some offered benefits? Real god Peng Hua laughed. That's a pity. I thought I would have a chance to fight brother Peng Hua. Jian Wushuang joked. You want to fight with me? Head to Thunderbolt Island, and we can do that. By then, we can even catch up over a drink. Real god Peng Hua was very enthusiastic. No problem. Jian Wushuang nodded, but he suddenly paused. Brother Peng Hua, talk to you later. The experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace have found me, Jian Wushuang replied. Be careful. Soaring Heaven King Palace aren't nice people to offend, real god Peng Hua exhorted. They aren't nice, but I am not either. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. Then he cut off his connection with real god Peng Hua. On the land in darkness, Jian Wushuang lifted his eyes and looked in one direction. His soul power had already detected the 3 approaching auras from the direction. The 3 auras belonged to 3 top chaotic real gods. Chapter 1684 Formation. Chapter 1684 Formation. The experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace have learned their lessons. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. The 3 top chaotic real gods who appeared within the coverage of his soul power stopped nearby, but didn't come nearer to fight with him. It was obvious that they intended to wait for more experts to gather. When they had a stronger formation, they'd attack him. Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered. He pretended that he didn't notice the 3 experts, and continued to move forward slowly. As time passed, there were more and more experts that appeared around Jian Wushuang. The experts who were from Soaring Heaven King Palace, and those who were hired by Soaring Heaven King Palace, made a total of 7. A total of 7 top chaotic real god, and 2 had the power of 1 who was extremely close in fighting power of 1 on the real god ranking list. Such a formation was very strong. However, Soaring Heaven King Palace wasn't in a hurry to attack him. Jian Wushuang, real god Huan Yu and I are nearby. There was suddenly a message. Oh, real god Duan Yen. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu were two top chaotic real gods in lineage of star. When the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace were approaching Jian Wushuang, the experts from lineage of star naturally followed. However, in terms of formation, the difference was vast. It wasn't because there was a vast difference between lineage of star and Soaring Heaven King Palace, but because lineage of star didn't pay a great price to hire experts for help. Hall Master Yuan wanted to do so, but Jian Wushuang had rejected him. We are doomed. Soaring Heaven King Palace has already gathered 7 top chaotic real gods around himself. Even an expert on real god ranking list has to avoid such a team formation. The 3 of us won't be able to match evenly, Real God Duan Yen said in a low voice. Maybe, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. Jian Wushuang, these experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace came for you. Why don't you look anxious at all? Real God Duan Yen was shocked at his calmness. It will eventually come anyway. What's the use of being anxious? Jian Wushuang smiled but didn't care. You're so positive. Real God Duan Yen pouted, but suddenly, there were 3 more fierce auras that popped into the range of Jian Wushuang's soul power coverage. The 3 auras quickly gathered with the other 7 experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Another 3? Real God Duan Yin was shocked. Shit, Real God Huan Yu looked solemn. Previously, there were only 7 top chaotic real gods, and they were already far beyond what we could withstand. But now there are another 3. A total of 10 top chaotic real gods. Among them, there are 2 who are extremely close to real god ranking list. This team formation is terrifying. Jian Wushuang, hurry up and run. Huan Yu and I will try our best to help you, Real God Duan Yin said. I will perform Heart of Sea region in collaboration with Realm Treasure. I should be able to hold them back for a while. You seized the chance, Real God Huan Yu said. The 2 real gods were obviously anxious. Actually, you don't have to. Jian Wushuang had yet to finish his sentence. They are going to attack. Real God Duan Yan's gaze fixed. In the dark void before Jian Wushuang, the 10 figures flew over at the same time at an extremely fast speed. The aura of the 10 figures was shockingly strong. The moment one moves, he immediately attracted the attention of the experts in the surrounding void. They are attacking. Soaring Heaven King Palace is finally attacking. They gathered a total of 10 top chaotic real gods before they attack. Soaring Heaven King Palace is cautious. Among the 10 top chaotic real gods, there are 2 who are extremely close to real god ranking list. Such a team formation, even if a true expert on real god ranking list came across this formation, I reckon he could only turn and flee. The experts that had gathered in the nearby void to watch were getting excited. They followed the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace to watch the fight. They want to witness a top geniuses passing with their own eyes. In the dark void, the top chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace appeared in the void before Jian Wushuang, and they let out a billowing murderous intention. Jian Wushuang, you have to die. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the terrifying explosion noise, there was boundless divine might that pressed at Jian Wushuang. However, before they could get close to Jian Wushuang, there was suddenly a lady in white that appeared before Jian Wushuang. The lady in white was graceful. She held a sword in her left hand, and a unique compass in her right hand. Heart of Sea region. Whirling world. Rumble. Sea water and jade green swept out and flooded the universe. Instantly, it formed billowing waves that were tens of thousands zhang tall. The billowing waves lapped and covered the 10 experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace. That is Real God Huan Yu from lineage of star. Real God Duan Yen is here too. The 2 of them want to stop us, so that Jian Wushuang will have a chance to flee. Humph. Dream on. Palace Master commanded that we hold no scruples. As the experts from lineage of star dare to get involved, we will kill them all together. Die. The 10 top chaotic real god took out their divine weapons simultaneously. At the same time, there were various auras that spread out. Some were like scorching hot flames, others like sturdy mountains. There were even some who wielded their huge axes and slashed the first 10,000 tall waves that swept at them. Jian Wushuang, Let's hurry up and leave. Real God Duanyin roared. Real God Huan Yu. And he wanted to flee at first instant. The two of them had never thought of fighting head-on with the 10 top chaotic real god. That was simply courting death. However, just as they prepared to leave, Jian Wushuang, who stood on the dark land, suddenly lifted his head and his cold eyes let out 2 substantiated lights as he looked at the 10 top chaotic real gods. Suddenly, there was an instant murderous intention that soared up. Swoosh! A ghostly figure burst out and left behind countless shadows in the void. The ghostly figure pierced Sea of Heart region that real god Huan Yu performed and appeared before the 10 top chaotic real gods. The sight shocked the experts at the scene, including those experts who were watching in the dark. They were all astonished. Everyone could tell that real god Huan Yu had performed Sea of Heart region and Whirling World with his all in order to create a chance for Jian Wushuang to flee and survive. Everyone thought so, including real god Huan Yu and real god Duan Yin themselves. But in the end, Jian Wushuang didn't run away but barged out alone. He came before the 10 top chaotic real gods. Chapter 1685, 10 Real Gods. Chapter 1685, 10 Real Gods. Jian Wushuang. Real god Duan Yin and real god Huan Yu saw Jian Wushuang's action, and they were shocked. Especially real god Huan Yu. It wasn't easy for her to perform Sea of Heart region and Whirling World at the same time. As for the 10 top chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace, they were first astonished. Then they laughed. Jian Wushuang is courting death. If the 10 of us team up, even if he really has the fighting power of one on real god ranking list, he will only be suppressed. As he wants to die, I shall grant him his wish. Die! The 10 real gods had murderous intention billowing, and their cold gazes were fixed upon Jian Wushuang. The following scene made the 10 real gods stared with their eyes wide open. Jian Wushuang appeared in front of them and pointed with his right index finger. Rumble! There was boundless divine power gathering. Instantly, there was a huge hand that seemed to appear from ancient times. The huge index finger pointed with a layer of dim light, as though it contained a complete reincarnation doctrine. Ancient God's 5th finger. Get through difficulty finger. The huge finger pressed over, and the 10 real gods stunned. Not only them, but also real gods Duan Yin and real god Huan Yu afar, including the experts hidden in the nearby void, were all dumbfounded. Too powerful. The power contained in the finger was too powerful. It was so powerful that it exceeded the top chaotic real god level. Even on the real god ranking list, there were definitely very few who could perform an attack of such a level. The strength of the one finger had yet to explode entirely. Merely an attack could make all 10 real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace feel like their scalps were tearing. Power, how could it be so powerful? Real god Duanyin muttered. He didn't know that Jian Wushuang's divine power was at the level of an almighty's. He performed ancient god's 5th finger with his divine power of an almighty level. How could it not be powerful? Hurry up. Don't just stand there. Work together to block this finger. A raging voice suddenly rang from the 10 real gods. The 10 real gods immediately came back to reality and took action one after another. As top chaotic real god, they were all experts in each corner of eternal chaotic world. However, the 10 chaotic real gods took action simultaneously and performed their killer tactics, just to block the huge finger that was attacking them. However, even though the 10 of them had joined forces, the outcome was bang! There was a ferocious noise that shook heaven and earth. The space-time exploded entirely. At the same time as the space-time exploded, poof, 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 poof. The 10 real gods spurted out a mouthful of blood, and 10 figures flew back from the impact. He fought against 10 alone head-on, but in the end, the 10 real gods were defeated. Just as the 10 real gods flew back from the impact, Blood Mountain Sword appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand, and there was suddenly a terrifying sword intention and murderous intention. Swoosh! With boundless shadows, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared before a top chaotic real god who was closest to him. Then, Blood Mountain's sword in his hand was swung out mercilessly. The sword was swung like a bolt of lightning that contained fierce divine power that an almighty had, and also with the power of reincarnation. Be careful! There was someone who shouted a reminder in time from the side. The brawny man in red armor was shocked. He immediately wielded the saber in his hand and slashed. He wanted to block Jian Wushuang's stroke. Dang! There was a low thud, and the saber in the brawny man's hand flew out. The cold swordlight pierced the brawny man's head. After it killed the brawny man, the cold swordlight didn't grow weaker, but continued to slash at the black-haired graceful lady behind. What? The black-haired graceful lady never thought that the sword light would continue to swing at her. Hence she couldn't dodge in time. Psst! The sword light pierced the black-haired graceful lady's body and dispersed gradually. The sight shocked everyone on the spot. It was a fierce finger earlier that suppressed 10 real gods head-on. Then, it was a close sword stroke, a casual stroke that killed 2 top chaotic real gods directly. What kind of fighting power was that? Quang! The figure moved in a ghostly fashion again. It brought along boundless shadows, and appeared behind a black-haired brawny elder. The same stroke with fierce divine power, merely suppressing one with force. Although the black-haired brawny man withstood it with his all, he was killed by Jian Wushuang with one stroke. Quang! 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 His ghostly figure continued to move, and he continued to swing out sword lights. Every stroke contained murderous intention. Psst! 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 The figures were slashed or pierced one after another at an unbelievable speed. In an instant, less than a breath's time, the entire void resumed tranquility. In the dark void, Jian Wushuang stood there coldly and slowly put Blood Mountain's sword in its scabbard. Surrounding him were 9 floating cold dead bodies. Although they were dead, there was fierce divine power left in the bodies, which was the reason their bodies didn't fall below instantly. Jian Wushuang lifted his head to look in one direction. At the end of his sight, there was a black-robed old lady. The black-robed old lady was real god Wuxia from Soaring Heaven King Palace. You are quite lucky. Jian Wushuang broke into a smile. The smile looked just like a demon's smile in real god Wuxia's eyes. She saw the 9 cold dead bodies floating around Jian Wushuang. There was astonishment and unprecedented glee in her eyes. She should be glad that she was lucky and fast enough in her response that she could escape in time. Otherwise, she definitely would be one of the dead bodies. In the nearby void, the experts hidden in the dark became quiet. Everyone was looking at Jian Wushuang, who was standing right in the middle of the void. With his power alone, he matched evenly with 10 top chaotic real gods. Among them, there were 2 peak experts who were extremely close to real god ranking list. But in the end, in an instant less than a breath's time, 9 out of the 10 real gods were massacred. There was only real god Wuxia, who survived through sheer luck. Astonishing, shocking. Everyone found it unbelievable. One should know just how great a formation it was with 10 top chaotic real gods joining forces. Even if it were expert on real god ranking list, those who were on higher ranking, they should be able to match evenly. However, they were fighting against Jian Wushuang, and they were massacred directly. Plus, the speed of massacre was extremely fast. Jian Wushuang, real god Duan Yen, and real god Huan Yu appeared in front of Jian Wushuang, and the 2 of them were astonished. Jian Wushuang flashed a smile at the 2 of them. I wanted to tell you earlier that actually, we don't have to flee. Chapter 1686 Rage. Chapter 1686 Rage. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, real god Duan Yen and real god Huan Yu didn't know if they should cry or laugh. If they were to know that Jian Wushuang was that powerful, they of course wouldn't need to flee. Most importantly, Jian Wushuang had never once showed his power. Although they heard that he had killed real god Cheng Tian and real god Shirgu, no one showed the fight after all. Nor did anyone know how Jian Wushuang, or what measure Jian Wushuang took to kill the 2 real gods. Hence, his power was still a mystery. Until then, when Jian Wushuang had put his true power on display. The moment he revealed it, it shocked heaven and earth. Let's go then, Jian Wushuang said. Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu exchanged a look and followed Jian Wushuang as he left. From the beginning until the end, Jian Wushuang's expression had been fairly calm. To him then, the top chaotic real gods were not challenging at all. Forget if there were 10 top chaotic real gods who teamed up. Even if there were 20, he could easily massacre them. He naturally wouldn't be smug with success with his battle achievements. He didn't care, but the others cared. 10 top chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace besieged Jian Wushuang, and he massacred 9 real gods directly in less than a breath's time with his power alone. The news immediately transformed into a shocking storm and swept across the entire Sanctuary Alliance. In Sanctuary Alliance, all forces and solo experts knew that Soaring Heaven King Palace and Lineage of Star were going to fight long ago. Hence, they were anticipating the result too. However, when the news about the fight spread, the experts in Sanctuary Alliance were dumbfounded. No one had expected that Jian Wushuang would be able to massacre 9 top real gods with his power alone. There was no one who expected that Jian Wushuang's power would have increased at such a large scale in merely 100 years. It was simply unbelievable. To Soaring Heaven King Palace, the bad news hit them like a thunderbolt. Their original intention in the fight had been to show dignity and serve as a deterrent force to all forces. But in the end, they had suffered such a great loss. Even though, among the 9 top chaotic real gods, there were 7 solo experts who were hired by Soaring Heaven King Palace. Soaring Heaven King Palace had lost 2 of their chaotic real gods. To Soaring Heaven King Palace, it was a great loss. On top of that, in addition to those that Jian Wushuang had killed earlier, they had suffered an even greater loss. Soaring Heaven King Palace Master was furious. Jian Wushuang has to die. We have to split his dead body. Then, we will be able to wash away the humiliation of Soaring Heaven King Palace. Where's Han Quan? Tell him to hurry up and rush over immediately. In the core region of the 8th layer, Jian Wushuang continued to plunge forward in the void casually, while Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu followed behind him. Real God Ling Xie continued to follow us. It seems that Soaring Heaven King Palace didn't plan to end just like that. Real God Duan Yin glanced the far void. Soaring Heaven King Palace has always been barbaric. They suffer such a great loss from me. How could they just let me off the hook? Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang, you know that Soaring Heaven King Palace will continue to send experts to come and kill you, but you travel so slowly in the void. Even I am wondering if you are intentionally waiting for the experts from Soaring Heaven King Palace to catch up. Real God Huan Yu suddenly looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's actions were really strange. Ever since he had revealed himself, he had been acting strange. If the other experts were to know that Soaring Heaven King Palace, such a major force, was after them, they would definitely opt to run away at the first instant. They would seize the time to return to Lineage of Star or Thunderbolt Island. If so, no matter how capable Soaring Heaven King Palace was, they couldn't do anything. But how about Jian Wushuang? He had been walking in the core region casually and at a slow speed, as though he was taking a casual stroll in his backyard. He was not worried at all. That was of course abnormal. Jian Wushuang, what's going on? Real God Duan Yin looked at Jian Wushuang curiously. Jian Wushuang smiled without concealing it. I am a person who makes a clear distinction between kindnesses and wrongs. As I am already fighting against Soaring Heaven King Palace, I might as well fight till the end, until they are willing to yield, admit defeat, or even be exterminated. Soaring Heaven King Palace wanted to show dignity through me, right? I happen to want to kill them. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu couldn't help but gasp. It was true. Jian Wushuang had done it on purpose. Just then, Jian Wushuang stopped his steps. Then, he wore a strange smile on his face. Why? Real God Duan Yin looked. Hall Master Yuan sent me a message earlier that Real God Han Quan has entered the 8th layer. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Real God Han Quan. Real God Duan Yin was shocked. The 11th place on Real God ranking list? Real God Huan Yu was shocked. Real God ranking list was the same as Universe God ranking list. There was a total of 100 experts. They were also made of chaotic real gods. However, their fighting powers were far beyond any ordinary top chaotic real gods. It was just like Universe gods on Universe God ranking list. The real gods listed on Real God ranking list were those on the top of the pyramid. Many experts on Real God ranking list were from various forces in Sanctuary Alliance. Of course, there were many solo experts as well. As Soaring Heaven King Palace was one of the top major forces, they naturally had real gods listed on Real God ranking list, and they had a total of 2, which was one more than Lineage of Star had. One of the 2 experts on Real God ranking list from Soaring Heaven King Palace was Real God Han Quan. He was extremely high in ranking on the Real God ranking list. He was listed in the 11th place, extremely close to the top 10 super experts. One should know that Lei Chao from Lineage of Star was ranked 20 places lower in Real God ranking list. Real God Han Quan was slightly stronger than Lei Chao. Real God ranking list, the higher their ranking, the scarier they are. Those in the top 10 are definitely superb existences of a monstrous level. Although they couldn't compare to Almighties, they aren't far from one. Although Real God Han Quan isn't in the top 10, he is merely one step away. Soaring Heaven King Palace sent him. Real God Duan Yin looked cold. Jian Wushuang, what can we do? Real God Huan Yu asked solemnly. What can we do? Jian Wushuang smiled. Then, he sat down on the ground. Don't panic. We will just wait for him to come here. What? Real God Duan Yin and Real God Huan Yu were astonished. Jian Wushuang had found out that Real God Han Quan was coming, but not only was he not worried, he had sat down directly and waited for his arrival. Is he trying to? Real God Duan Yin and Real God Huan Yu exchanged a look. The 2 of them could guess Jian Wushuang's plan. From their viewpoint, it seemed a little mad. Chapter 1687 Arrival. Chapter 1687, Arrival. At a wasteland in the core region of the 8th layer. Swoosh. A figure appeared out of thin air. It was a young man with a slightly emaciated and pale body. His body was also filled with coldness, as if he were the abysmal hell himself. After coming to the wasteland, he closed his eyes and waited quietly in his position. Half a day later, another figure descended abruptly. This person was a giant-like purple-robed old man, who was close to 3 meters tall. Real God Han Quan, have I kept you waiting for a long time? The purple-robed old man laughed heartily. Real God Han Quan, who was the young man with a body filled with coldness, opened his eyes and looked at the person who had come. I originally thought that you would need at least a few days to get here. However, you only took half a day. Seems like your murderous intent toward Jian Wushuang is no less than the Soaring Heaven King Palace's. Everyone knows about the grudge between me and the Lineage of Star. Since such an impressive genius has appeared in the Lineage of Star this time around, I naturally cannot allow him to continue to grow and become the 2nd Star Palace Master of the Lineage of Star. The purple-robed old man said coldly. That Jian Wushuang is indeed extremely talented. However, it's a pity that he is too arrogant. I have gotten news that he is currently sitting down quietly somewhere in the core region, and it is obvious that he is waiting for me. Real God Han Quan said. Waiting for you? The purple-robed old man raised his eyebrows. Previously, the Soaring Heaven King Palace gathered 10 top chaotic real gods, which included 2 experts who were extremely close to the Real God ranking list, so that they could team up and kill him. However, they were almost wiped out by him in the end. With such abilities, it should be enough for him to rank at the very front of the Real God ranking list, and he is probably not that far from me. Since our abilities are quite close, Jian Wushuang is naturally not afraid of me. Real God Han Quan continued speaking. However, he will never expect that apart from me, you will also be going to kill him. If both of us were to team up, even if it were experts in the top 10 of the Real God ranking list, we would still be able to kill them. Hence, this Jian Wushuang will definitely die. The purple-robed old man laughed. Even if the both of us are unable to kill him, the Soaring Heaven King Palace has also prepared another trump card. With that, he will still die. Real God Han Quan's eyes were shining with a cold light. Since that's the case, let's not delay this anymore, and head over there quickly, the purple-robed old man said. All right. Real God Han Quan nodded his head. After that, both of them headed for Jian Wushuang's location immediately. In the barren dark land, Jian Wushuang was sitting down quietly with his legs crossed, and his eyes were closed as well. Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu stayed beside Jian Wushuang. At present, the void nearby still has many experts. All of them knew that the matter this time round would not come to an end yet. They have come. Jian Wushuang, who was sitting down on the ground with his legs crossed, opened his eyes abruptly, and a shrill light flashed in his eyes. Many experts who were near the area of void also noticed the two figures who were speeding over from afar immediately. Two of them. One of them is Real God Han Quan. But who is the other person? All the experts were baffled. In no time, the two figures which were speeding over appeared in front of them. Among them, Real God Han Quan naturally did not require much explanation. As for the other person, he was the purple-robed old man who was close to 3 meters tall. As soon as they saw the purple-robed old man, many of the experts present were shocked. The expressions of both Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu also changed greatly. Jiugong, monarch of Jiugong Holy Kingdom. It's Real God Jiugong. Gosh, Real God Jiugong has come as well. Everyone's faces were filled with astonishment. Similarly, Real God Jiugong was an expert of the Real God ranking list. Moreover, his ranking was higher than Real God Han Quan's. He was a super existence who was ranked 5th on the Real God ranking list. Furthermore, everyone knew that there was a huge grudge between Real God Jiugong and the lineage of Star, and the grudge could also be said to be unresolved without death. For example, experts of the lineage of Star dared not step into the base of Real God Jiugong Holy Kingdom. Of course, Real God Jiugong also dared not appear in the Purple Moon Sanctuary. However, for the clash this time around, the main characters were Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Hence, no one expected the Soaring Heaven King Palace to actually hire Real God Jiugong over as well. Two real gods with one ranked 5th, and the other ranked 11th on the Real God ranking list. If they were to team up, the results would be many eyes of sympathy looked toward Jian Wushuang. However, when Jian Wushuang saw the two experts of the Real God ranking list in front of him, who was not flustered at all. Instead, he wore a smile. It will only be interesting like this. As Jian Wushuang laughed indifferently, he stood up slowly. Swoosh, swoosh. Real God Jiugong and Real God Han Quan appeared in front of Jian Wushuang at the same time, and they were standing less than 100 miles away from him. Haha, I heard a long time ago that an exceptional inverse cultivator had appeared in the lineage of Star. Today, I am finally fortunate enough to see you. Real God Jiugong was laughing loudly. Real God Jiugong, we have actually met once before, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Oh, Real God Jiugong frowned. Do you remember Real God Longqing and his group of people who you met tens of thousands of years ago when the Blood Demon Church was destroyed in your Jiugong Holy Kingdom? And that within Real God Longqing and his group of people, there was a normal person without any divine power? Jian Wushuang said. Real God Jiugong started to recall at once. In the next moment his eyes turned grave. Is that the normal old man from back then? That's right. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. I am the one who hired Real God Longqing and his group of people of destruction, the Blood Demon Church. However, I did not expect the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven to descend at that point in time. Hence, I lost all my divine power and became an extremely weak white-haired old man. And at that point in time, I met you. However, it's a pity that you did not recognize me. I see. Seems like I carelessly let you off back then. However, it doesn't matter as I merely allowed you to live another tens of thousands of years longer. Today, you still have to die. Real God Jiugong bellowed. Real God Jiugong, there's no need to continue saying unnecessary things to him. Let's attack straight away and kill him. Real God Han Quan had a threatening and murderous look. All right. Real God Jiugong also nodded his head earnestly. At once, two frightening auras burst forth abruptly, and they headed for Jian Wushuang right away. The surrounding universe became quiet instantly as well. Jian Wushuang. Both Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu looked toward Jian Wushuang. This is not a battle that both of you can participate in. Please retreat to the side first, Jian Wushuang said apathetically. Real God Duan Yen and Real God Huan Yu looked at each other, and both of them felt helpless. Although both of them were top chaotic real gods, they still do not have the right to participate in a battle between experts in the real god ranking list. In particular, a battle between experts at the very front of the real god ranking list. Please be careful. After Real God Duan Yen spoke, he retreated far away with Real God Huan Yu. In the dark land, Jian Wushuang was holding his Blood Mountain sword tightly with one hand and looking at the two experts in front of him with his eyes filled with excitement. Come. Let me see how strong the experts ranked 5th and 11th in the real god ranking list are. Chapter 1688. 1 verses 2. Chapter 1688. 1 verses 2. The void had stiffened long ago. The experts hidden in the surroundings were holding their breath as they anticipated. Suddenly, kill! Real God Han Quan let out an angry bellow. In the instant the bellow stopped, Real God Han Quan and Real God Jiugong suddenly pounded out. Look! Real God Jiugong was covered in strong extermination aura, just like a demon who was going to destroy heaven and earth, as he held a thick black saber in his hand. Green God extermination. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Real God Jiugong held the black saber in his hand, and it was in constant miraculous movement. Every miraculous movement it made gave out a suffocating power explosion. There was a total of 15 moves, and the black saber in his hand slashed 15 times as well. Jian Wushuang was still standing on the ground, while the 15 earth-shattering blade lights were flying towards him. Every single one of the 15 blade lights could easily kill a top chaotic real god. Every single one of them was enough to strike fear in the experts at the surrounding of the battlefield. Jian Wushuang glared, and there was a boundless divine power that soared up. He leaped and wielded Blood Mountain sword. Dang! 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 There was continuous clashing noises. Every single clash broke the void. Heaven and earth were engulfed in an extermination storm. The power dispersed after the 15 clashes while Jian Wushuang continued to stand erect in the extermination storm. Your skill with a knife is pretty good. It's a pity that you lack the strength, Jian Wushuang smiled. This boy, Real God Jiugong's face changed. His green god extermination, 15 continuous attacks of blade light, one was stronger than the other. When performed with full power, even the top 10 experts on the real god ranking list would find it difficult to withstand. However, Jian Wushuang took the attack so lightly and easily. Die! Another cold roar suddenly rang. The void behind Jian Wushuang was pierced all of a sudden. The entire heaven and earth instantly turned murky. Among the murky heaven and earth, a dim light suddenly flashed and flew past the void. Jian Wushuang stood there, and he could faintly hear tens of thousands of dragons roaring all together. At the same time, there was a terrifying chill. He was too lazy to even look to the back, but slashed with his sword backhandedly. A simple stroke, but it contained the boundless divine power of an almighty. He pressed his opponent with pressure. Bong! There was a loud thud, and the universe resumed normalcy. The light grew dim, and Real God Han Quan's body flew backwards. Such strong power! Real God Han Quan looked shocked as he bellowed. Jiugong, this boy is very strong, far stronger than us. But his comprehension of power of heaven isn't high. Don't compete in strength, rely on techniques to kill him. Understand. Real God Jiugong's gaze grew cold, and the extermination aura rose again. The boundless extermination aura soared up, and instantly formed a tens of thousands of zhang tall extermination beast in the void. The extermination beast roared, and then opened its mouth. Pew, 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 pew. One after another, extermination light shot towards Jian Wushuang. The extermination lights weren't exactly powerful, but they were extremely fast. The direction which the lights were shot into were cunningly tricky too. As for real god Jiugong himself, he turned into a cloud of fog and hovered away. Jian Wushuang gripped Blood Mountain sword tightly with his right hand, while his left hand quivered and exploded with a fierce divine power. It instantly shattered the void before him, and the extermination lights that were aiming at him broke apart too. However, after they broke, the extermination beast that let out the lights instantly turned into a huge yet strange realm and expanded towards Jian Wushuang. Huh! Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. He realized that in this realm, his sight was greatly hindered. He could only see at most 10 miles surrounding him. Not only that, his soul power had been restricted in a similar fashion. Interesting, Jian Wushuang smiled. Virum. The void shook and a stream of darkness suddenly pounded him. Simultaneously, a blade light that contained boundless extermination power appeared next to Jian Wushuang out of nowhere and slammed at Jian Wushuang's head directly. Even Jian Wushuang was shocked by the sudden slash, but he managed to respond in time. He suddenly turned and wielded Blood Mountain sword. The sword instantly dispersed the incoming sword light. But then at his surroundings, there were suddenly countless dim lights from all directions. Boundless starlight. Real god Han Quan clenched his teeth as he stabbed with his long spear. With that one stab, the countless dim lights surrounding Jian Wushuang flew towards him like lightning. What? Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. Even if it was him, he couldn't block so many dim lights at that moment. Bang! 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 There were whistles and explosions as Jian Wushuang was buried by the dim lights. A terrifying divine power swept across and the earth shook. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two figures plunged and stopped in the void. They were real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan. This boy should be dead, right? Real god Jiugong said in a cold voice. Definitely dead. My boundless starlight performed at such an environment earlier. It was impossible for him to block them. He is definitely dead. Real god Han Quan was confident. He made the two of us team up to perform our killer techniques. Jian Wushuang died with pride. Real god Jiugong sneered. Just as the smiles on their faces were beginning to spread, they stiffened again. In the divine power storm before them, there was a terrifying sword shadow that suddenly swept out to drive off the divine power storm. Then, a figure reappeared before everyone again. He held his sword with one hand. The crimson robe that he was wearing turned into crimson armor that covered his body. There were a dozen faint white traces on the crimson armor, which were left by attacks from spear shadows of the boundless starlight. Although there were a dozen white traces on the crimson armor, the aura on him wasn't worn out one bit. On the contrary, it became stronger. This, real god Jiugong stared. Didn't you say that this boy would definitely be dead? Why isn't he dead or his aura weakened? How is it possible? Real god Han Quan had a look of disbelief. He didn't know that Jian Wushuang was not only strong in divine power, but also his divine body. His divine power and divine body were at the level of an almighty. The earlier technique was meticulous, but the power was dispersed. Jian Wushuang was hit by the spear a dozen times, but the remaining power after being weakened by blood feather reincarnation armor wasn't enough to damage Jian Wushuang's divine body. You have displayed almost all of your techniques. It's my turn now. Chapter 1689, A Big Defeat. Chapter 1689, A Big Defeat. Now it's my turn. Jian Wushuang's indifferent laughter reverberated across the universe, and it caused many of the experts around the battlefield to be shocked. The expressions of real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan also became unusually grave. Before fighting with Jian Wushuang, they had never expected Jian Wushuang to be so strong. One of them was ranked 11th, while the other was ranked 5th in the real god ranking list. Even with these two super experts teaming up and unleashing many moves, they were actually unable to do anything against him in the end. Just then, under their attention, Jian Wushuang raised the Blood Mountain sword in his hands high up in the air. At the moment where the Blood Mountain sword was raised, a shocking sword essence rose high up into the sky, and an infinite amount of divine power burst forth as well. In the void, which was in complete darkness, additional crimson sword shadows appeared out of thin air. Every sword crimson shadow was extremely big, and the power they emitted was so strong that it was shocking and suffocating. At the very least, all the experts around the area who were observing the battle felt extremely threatened by the crimson sword shadows. Just then, tens of crimson sword shadows had already formed in this piece of universe. One crimson sword shadow was already enough to make top chaotic real gods feel extremely threatened. What about tens of them? The experts observing the battle had finally finished counting. There was a total of 48 crimson sword shadows. This was due to the 7-star picture, which Jian Wushuang had comprehended back then. Not only did his comprehension of his doctrine improve greatly, his understanding of sword principles had also achieved a whole new level. As such, when he had unleashed the myriad waves move, he was naturally able to create more crimson sword shadows. After a total of 48 sword shadows had formed, they fused together at a speed that naked eyes could perceive. In just a short period of time, a new crimson sword shadow appeared in the universe. In the whole universe, only that one sword shadow remained. However, after that sword shadow appeared, everyone present became terrified. Even when real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan saw the sword shadow, they also became extremely shocked. Even I am slightly fearful of this stroke. Han Quan, both of us have to be careful, real god Jiugong said in a grave voice. I know. Real god Han Quan nodded his head earnestly. It is only possible to block this stroke if both of us team up. If it were 1 against 1, you will be fine as you are strong. As for me, even if I were to not die, at the very least, I would be fatally wounded. Let's do it! Real god Jiugong gave a shrill cry. After that, an unprecedented destructive aura appeared from his body instantly. Similarly, real god Han Quan looked ahead with wisdom. His body turned slightly scarlet in color, and a great amount of divine power burst forth. Divine light, great destruction. Real god Jiugong's body shook violently. By activating the destructive power, the thick and big saber on his hands expanded fiercely, and it covered half the void instantly. The big saber was covered in an infinite amount of destructive power, and it contained the ability to destroy everything. Kill! With a loud cry, the destructive edge of his saber, which had covered half the void, was swung out abruptly. As for real god Han Quan, he roared continuously, and the divine power in his body was inserted into the long spear in his hands endlessly. After that, shadows of ancient giant dragons appeared behind him out of thin air. By counting them, there were at least thousands of giant dragon shadows. The power of 1,000 dragons, Dragon Star extermination. Real god Han Quan's eyes were glowing brilliantly. At that moment, the thousands of giant dragon shadows which had appeared behind him roared loudly at the same time. After that, they moved fiercely and entered the long spear in real god Han Quan's hands instantly. Filled with the power of 1,000 dragons, the frightening spear was swung out ferociously. All their powers were world-shaking. As for many of the experts who witnessed such a scene, all of them understood that real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan had unleashed their strongest moves. They had exerted all their strength. The crimson sword shadow created by Jian Wushuang's myriad waves. The destructive edge unleashed by real god Jiugong. As well as the strongest spear stroke, which contained the power of 1,000 dragons of real god Han Quan. 3 earth-shaking attacks clashed head-on with one another in a split second. Boom! The heavens fell and the earth cracked. Frightening power burst forth, as if it wanted to tear everything in the universe into pieces. For example, even though the experts who were observing the battle were very far away, they could still feel the unbelievable power from the battlefield. Those top chaotic real gods were clear that if that power were to touch them slightly, they would be doomed. For such an intense battle, only super experts who stood at the top of the pyramid had the right to participate in it. As for them, they could only observe such a soul-stirring battle from afar. Swoosh! Swoosh! All of a sudden, two rays of glittering lights were shot out from the universe-destroying storm. It was real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan. At present, both of their bodies looked a bit miserable. Real god Jiugong was in a mess, and his face looked slightly pale. As for real god Han Quan, his situation was even worse. His face was as pale as paper, and there was blood at the corners of his mouth. Moreover, the aura on his body was at least 30% weaker than before. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. Swoosh! 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 Soft sounds of feet stepping on the air could be heard. Real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan then raised their heads fiercely and looked forward. All of a sudden, a passage was created from within the divine power storm, which was still moving madly, and a young figure walked out from it slowly. He was still carrying his sword with one hand, and his aura was exceptionally strong like before. At the same time as he walked forward, a dull and slightly chilly voice could be heard in the piece of universe. Real god Jiugong, ranked 5th in the Real God ranking list. Real God Han Quan, ranked 11th in the Real God ranking list. I originally thought that with the both of you teaming up, both of you would be able to give me some fun. However, looking at it now, both of you are nothing much more than this. It was only after his words came out of his mouth that Jian Wushuang's face appeared in the line of vision of everyone again. Upon witnessing that, apart from the divine power storm, which was still wreaking havoc, everything in the universe became silent. Complete silence. The eyes of real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan were filled with anger. However, their eyes were filled with even more fear. Even though they, two experts of the Real God ranking list, had teamed up, they were still defeated in the end. They had lost to Jian Wushuang. With such abilities, both of you do not even have the right to get me to use my Hongjun golden sword. Jian Wushuang shook his head, and his body was filled with a murderous aura. I shall stop playing with the both of you. Accept your death. Jian Wushuang's eyes shone with a harsh light. After that he raised his right hand slowly. On his right hand, frightening divine power had gathered on his index finger a long time ago. Ancient God's 6th finger, Sun Corrosion finger. Rumble, the universe collapsed and an ancient giant finger descended abruptly. The instant they saw the ancient giant finger, real god Jiugong's eyes shrank, and all the hair on his body stood up. As for real god Han Quan, he opened his eyes wide and hopelessness appeared deep inside his eyes. Chapter 1690, Sir God Qianlan. Chapter 1690, Sir God Qianlan. The ancient finger descended. No matter if it was real god Jiugong or real god Han Quan, they couldn't withstand it. Just then, a dim light suddenly plunged over from the nearby void. The dim light brought about a strong power, and collided with the ancient finger like lightning. Rumble. As heaven and earth quivered, the ancient finger that struck fear into every real god at the scene suddenly shattered into pieces. Ha! Jian Wushuang's gaze was fixed, and looked in the direction that the dim light was shot. The experts hidden in the nearby void looked in the same direction simultaneously. In their sights, there was a gray-robed elderly that slowly appeared. The gray-robed elder with white hair and a ruddy complexion had a cold gaze that gave a dignified look. He appeared and there was a unique aura that spread around. Suddenly, he became the focus of the universe. Almighty! There were many experts that couldn't help but gasp in shock. From the unique aura and his action that broke the ancient finger that Jian Wushuang had used with a mere wave, the identity of the incomer was obvious. Looking at the incomer, real god Han Quan looked thrilled. He quickly greeted politely, Sir God Qianlan. The gray-robed elderly nodded faintly as his figure moved over gradually. As he moved closer, Jian Wushuang's face grew solemn. Previously, no matter if it was real god Han Quan or real god Jiugong, he could deal with them easily, and he couldn't be bothered. However, then it was a true almighty who came. The experts hidden nearby sighed in astonishment. No one had guessed that soaring Heaven King Palace would throw in so much this round. Not only did real god Han Quan teamed up with real god Jiugong, He had even sent an Almighty to stay in the back. Almighty was a super existence of eternal chaotic world. In the 10 sanctuaries, if any force were to have an Almighty to back them up, they would definitely be the top force. Even in Sanctuary Alliance, they would take a proper place. Soaring Heaven King Palace had very few existences like that, but they had even sent an Almighty to come over personally just to take care of Jian Wushuang. The gray-robed elderly Sir God Qianlan finally appeared on the battlefield. He stood next to real God Han Quan. Han Quan is useless, said Sir God Qianlan, and to take care of this personally, real God Han Quan said softly. He knew that Soaring Heaven King Palace had not only sent him to team up with real God Jiogong to kill Jian Wushuang, they had also prepared a backup plan. However, he didn't know what the backup plan was. Until then, he had understood that the backup plan was Sir God Qianlan. You can't be blamed for this, Sir God Qianlan replied. His voice was calm, and there was no intention of reprimand. He had come to the void long ago, but he was hidden in the dark. If an Almighty were to hide themselves intentionally, even Jian Wushuang's soul power wouldn't be able to probe to find him. Jian Wushuang naturally didn't notice his arrival. In the earlier scene where real God Han Quan and real God Jiogong had teamed up and fought against Jian Wushuang, he had watched clearly. He knew that it wasn't real God Han Quan and real God Jiogong being useless, but Jian Wushuang being too powerful. From the power that Jian Wushuang had displayed earlier, his fighting power could totally be listed in the top 3 on Real God ranking list. Jian Wushuang. There was a cold voice and Sir God Qianlan's murky yet cold eyes glared at him. Simultaneously, there was a boundless power that instantly pressed towards Jian Wushuang. The power was extremely strong, but Jian Wushuang's face didn't change. It seems that it is a great honor of mine, Real God Han Quan and Real God Jiogong, who rank among the top on Real God ranking list, teamed up. Now an Almighty has come. Soaring Heaven King Palace looks highly upon me, Jian Wushuang chuckled. His laughter was obviously in disdain. Anyone at the scene could tell. Humph, I didn't intend to come out. However, you are behaving too recklessly. You continuously kill chaotic real gods from Soaring Heaven King Palace. If we can't kill you, how can we stand on our feet in Sanctuary Alliance? So, even if I have to bear the bad name of bullying a young one, I will have to kill the outrageously arrogant man here. Sir God Qianlan's voice was loud and bright. He sounded so staunchly righteous. It was normal. An Almighty was normally concerned with their names. Plus, between an Almighty and a real God, the difference was too vast. Although Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator, he had yet to reach the level of a chaotic real God, and he couldn't be compared to an Almighty. If he who was an Almighty were to take action at Jian Wushuang personally, he was obviously bullying the young one. It would definitely be embarrassing if it were to spread. Hence, Soaring Heaven King Palace had only sent real God Han Quan and real God Jiogong to kill Jian Wushuang at the beginning. But then there was no alternative, so he revealed himself. After all, him having his reputation damaged was better than the entire Soaring Heaven King Palace turning into a joke. Die boy. Sir God Qianlan didn't bother to talk any more nonsense. He glared at Jian Wushuang coldly, as though he was looking at a dead body. Just as he stopped speaking, rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Jian Wushuang's face grew dim, and he realized that the space surrounding him was shivering vigorously. Then voila! Large chunks of yellowish-brown air current swept out and formed stormy seas that covered him from all directions. Jian Wushuang moved as he intended to dodge, but he realized that the yellowish-brown air current had engulfed the entire universe, and there was no way he could avoid it. Then the yellowish-brown air current crushed him with the power of universe madly. From the view of the experts from the outside world, Jian Wushuang was drowned in a yellowish-brown prison. The prison was pressuring him savagely, and there was a constant explosion from within. Sir God Qianlan stood there coldly as his gaze was covered with a chilly gleam. As an Almighty, his strength was not only in his divine power or divine body, it included his comprehension of power of Heaven Way too. An Almighty's comprehension of power of Heaven Way could pass through level 7 of Doctrine Palace. He could easily kill any experts on real god ranking list. It was also the difference between Almighty and real god, a huge difference that couldn't be crossed. Just like his current technique, if he was fighting against real god like Han Quan, he would have been dead long ago. However, Jian Wushuang was not someone real god Han Quan could be compared to after all. Hong! With a vigorous explosion, the yellowish-brown prison that was continuously shrinking formed a hole out of nowhere. From the hole, there was a huge dark golden arm that extended. As the dark golden arm tore madly, the yellowish-brown prison was torn with a big hole. Chapter 1691 Almighty. Chapter 1691 Almighty. Crack crack. Cracks appeared all around the yellowish-brown prison continuously, and the yellowish-brown prison burst open completely in the end. After bursting open, a giant body appeared in the universe. He was more than 100 feet tall. He also had a total of 4 heads and 8 arms. Moreover, his body was covered with a dark golden light, and there were 6 stars in the space between his eyebrows. His power was shocking. It was Jian Wushuang who had revealed his ancient god body, which had 4 heads and 8 arms. Sir God Qianlan looked at Jian Wushuang with surprise. Ancient god bloodline. Furthermore, it's the noble royal ancient god bloodline, which is extremely rare. Looks like if I want to kill you, I will also need to use some other tricks. Sir God Qianlan's voice resounded across the universe, and a crimson long rod appeared on his hands. The long rod was emitting a scorching hot aura. The moment it appeared on Sir God Qianlan's hands, its heat melted the surrounding void straight away. Upon seeing the long rod, many experts who were hiding secretly were shocked. Although Sir God Qianlan had taken action as well, he only created a giant yellowish-brown prison to crush Jian Wushuang into pieces. However, at that moment, he had taken out his own weapon. It was obvious that he was about to get serious. You can unleash whatever moves you have. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. 10 heaven incinerating colors red flame stroke. Sir God Qianlan swung the crimson long rod on his hands, and countless crimson waves appeared on the void immediately. The crimson waves then swept through the area. After that, the crimson waves gathered in front of Sir God Qianlan. Rumbled a giant crimson red shadow, which was hundreds of feet wide, appeared out of thin air. In no time, the universe changed color and all beings trembled in fear. When the experts in the vicinity of the battlefield saw the giant crimson rod shadow, their hearts roared, and their minds were about to be destroyed. The void was prodded through by the giant crimson rod shadow like paper paste. The giant crimson rod shadow then headed toward Jian Wushuang slowly with shocking power. Jian Wushuang's body shook violently, as he had felt an unprecedented pressure at that moment. These are the abilities of an almighty? It's really powerful. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing brilliantly. To him, before he achieved Stage 2 Ultimate Real God, almighties were existences who stood at the very top. He had also never seen almighties fighting before. At present, it was his first time seeing it. Moreover, the person who the almighty wanted to take care of was him. Although he was a bit surprised, Jian Wushuang was not afraid in the slightest bit. At that moment where the giant crimson rod shadow charged toward him, imposing divine power rose from his body. Ancient God secret skill, thunder attracting skill. His imposing divine power entered the void high up in the sky. Boom! All of a sudden, the surrounding black universe shook. After that, a giant crack appeared on the highest heavens. The crack split the universe into 2 halves and crimson life, destroying sacred thunders gathered in the crack. After that, the life-destroying sacred thunder descended. Rumble! There was a total of 9 life-destroying sacred thunders. Every one of them was as wide as a mountain, and all of them struck the top crimson rod shadow at the same time. Clump! Rustle! The heaven fell and the earth cracked. The ground below Jian Wushuang and Sir God Qianlan sunk down straight away by hundreds of meters, and a giant hole was created. At the void, the frightening power of the divine power was wreaking havoc and destroying everything. It was just like the end of the world. Swoosh! A figure was sent flying out of the divine power storm, which was wreaking havoc. It was Jian Wushuang. The body of Jian Wushuang then was a bit miserable. However, the aura in his body was still thick and in a great amount. As for Sir God Qianlan, he still assumed an air of superiority. Although the 9 life-destroying sacred thunders that Jian Wushuang had attracted had shocking power, such that they could tear the crimson rod shadow that he had unleashed into pieces, the divine power that was dispersed did not spread onto his body. Jian Wushuang, I did not expect your divine power to actually be so strong. Sir God Qianlan's eyes were filled with shrill light, and he stared at Jian Wushuang. Looking at your aura, you are merely an eternal real god. However, looking purely at your divine power, you are actually not a lot weaker than me. An inverse cultivator is indeed frightening. Haha. As expected of an almighty, your moves are indeed impressive. It's much more interesting to fight with you compared to real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan. Jian Wushuang laughed. Moreover, your abilities have the right to get me to use the Hongjun Golden Sword. Hongjun Golden Sword? Sir God Qianlan was puzzled. Jian Wushuang did not give any explanation. With a wave of his hands, a 4-foot-long, extremely unusual sword-type weapon with blades on both ends appeared beside Jian Wushuang. This sword-type weapon was gold in color, and it was floating quietly in its position. It was the Hongjun Golden Sword. The Hongjun Golden Sword was a valuable treasure that relied mainly on the power of space-time, and was controlled by soul power. During the period of time where Jian Wushuang had stayed in the standalone space of Dark Region, he had been studying the Hongjun Golden Sword intensively with great effort. Hence, he was certain about its power, as well as how strong it was. To date, during the clash with the Soaring Heaven King Palace, although he had already experienced many great battles, no one had managed to force him to use the Hongjun Golden Sword. For example, when real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan teamed up, they still did not have the right to get him to use this trump card. It was only then that Jian Wushuang took out this trump card for real. Previously, although I used the Hongjun Golden Sword to massacre quite a number of star demons for practice, this is the first time that I have used the Hongjun Golden Sword to fight an intense battle with a human cultivator. Moreover, my opponent is an almighty. Jian Wushuang was licking his lips. His eyes were also glowing with a strange light, and at the next moment, he activated his power of space-time. The Hongjun Golden Sword, which had been floating quietly on the void, shook slightly. After that, whoosh, a ray of golden light was shot out abruptly. Although the golden light had only just lit up, it had already covered a great distance and appeared in front of Sir God Qianlan. Even if it were an almighty like Sir God Qianlan, when he saw the ray of golden light which had appeared abruptly, he was caught unprepared. However, he still swung the crimson long rod in his hands immediately. Swish! A crimson rod shadow attacked from the void. When the two attacks clashed head-on, an unreasonable amount of power burst forth at the same time. Sir God Qianlan's expression changed slightly. He could sense a great amount of power in the attack. Even if it were him, with such a great amount of power, he also could not help but retreat 2 steps back. The ray of golden light was also sent flying by him. However, after the ray of golden light regained its posture, it swept past the void strangely, and appeared beside Sir God Qianlan immediately. This speed! Sir God Qianlan finally revealed a shocked expression. The speed of the ray of golden light was too fast and strange. Even though Sir God Qianlan had only just regained his posture, the ray of golden light had already headed toward him. Chapter 1692, Present Dominance. Chapter 1692, Present Dominance. Bang! 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 There were golden lights that flashed past, one after another. Every single flash aimed towards Sir God Qianlan. Every single hit that contained fierce power, that pushed Sir God Qianlan backwards. In Sir God Qianlan's eyes, there was a chilly gleam. He constantly wanted to shake off or break apart the golden light. However, the speed of the golden light was too fast. Hongjun Golden Sword focused on space-time power. The scariest aspect of it was its speed and flexibility. The Hongjun golden sword took the form of golden light and plunged into the void, just like spacetime's spoilt child that couldn't be contained by spacetime power. It hit Sir God Qianlan and made him fall back from the impact. Then immediately it hit him again the second time. It didn't give him any chance to prepare for a counterattack. Sir God Qianlan was an almighty. He had many tricks, but he had no chance to perform them at all under the continuous hits of the golden light. He was retreating from the continuous force of the golden light. Bastard, what is this? Hongjun golden sword flew and hit Sir God Qianlan over and over again. He felt aggrieved and the rage was soaring in his eyes. Too fast and too creepy, and it keeps coming. Unless I take one hit directly, I'll have a chance to counterattack. But the power of golden light isn't weak. After one hit, I'll definitely be severely injured. This Jian Wushuang, I wonder where he learnt such a superior skill. Sir God Qianlan was thinking to himself, and he couldn't help but look at Jian Wushuang. To take one hit of Hongjun golden sword was a huge price to pay, but if he didn't do so, he could only be suppressed by Hongjun golden sword. Of course, there was also another possibility. He could move closer to Jian Wushuang as he was suppressed, then fight in close combat with Jian Wushuang, so he couldn't control the Hongjun golden sword. Speaking of close combat, he gave up after he saw Jian Wushuang's 4 heads and 8 arms ancient god body. In eternal chaotic world, who didn't know that ancient god tribe was the strongest in close combat? If he were to fight in close combat with an ancient god, he would simply be courting death. Hongjun golden sword continued to hit, and Sir God Qianlan was at the state where he was suppressed and couldn't counterattack. Looking at the scene, Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lips and smirked coldly. With the Hongjun golden sword that I performed with my all, I held Sir God Qianlan back with just one sword, but I could only hold him back. Jian Wushuang was aware that almighties were the strongest bunch of experts in eternal chaotic world, and all of them were impressive. Their defense power was terrifyingly strong too. Sir God Qianlan was just hesitating about if he wanted to go all out. Once he opted to, Jian Wushuang wouldn't be at ease. As for killing Sir God Qianlan, it was an extravagant hope with Jian Wushuang's current power. Although I can't kill him, I can teach him a lesson. Jian Wushuang's gaze fixed. He drove Hongjun golden sword with his soul power, and continued to attack Sir God Qianlan. As he pressured him, there was billowing divine power, an ancient god power soaring from his body. Rumble. His billowing divine power. After a few repeated battles, Jian Wushuang expanded quite a lot of divine power. Then, he spent another 20% of his divine power. He expanded 20% of his divine power in order to perform the technique. The technique was the strongest technique of ancient god tribe. Secret skill of ancient god moon picking skill. There was a glimpse of light that burst from Jian Wushuang's eyes. Then, the billowing divine power suddenly swept out. Virum. The void quivered. Sir God Qianlan, who was still blocking the attack of Hongjun golden sword, his face changed. He could clearly feel unique energy in the void around him. Suddenly, Walala, the void surrounding him instantly shattered. The power spread towards him, and it made him shiver. He looked terrified too. At that moment, he felt that the entirety of heaven and earth, including the entirety of space-time, was pressing towards him, and was going to crush him into pieces. It was too powerful, and it was too strange. It was as though he was being repelled by heaven and earth. It was as though he shouldn't exist in the world. My body, I can't move it? Sir God Qianlan looked surprised. Yes, he couldn't move. No matter how he struggled, how he triggered his divine power, he couldn't move. He could only quiver slightly at the most. The repellent power of the space-time pressed over him, and he could only withstand it bluntly. Moon-picking skill was the only secret skill of ancient god that involved space-time, and it was also rather magical. If the secret skill were to explode its extreme power, it could repel and break a person away from the space-time. Then, it could drive the space-time power of the entire heaven and earth to crush him into dust. Jian Wushuang had just mastered the secret skill at a beginner level. He wasn't good at it, and he couldn't give full play to the power of the secret skill. Even so, the secret skill that he had performed could still pose a great threat against Sir God Qianlan. Pust. There was a low divine power crushing sound that made Sir God Qianlan in the void grew pale. After quite some time, the pressing spacetime power calmed down, and his figure became movable again. Swoosh! A creepy golden light lit up again. It maintained a fast speed, and was unpredictable in action. Sir God Qianlan couldn't block it in time. Hong Jun golden sword was like a sharp, golden awl that hit Sir God Qianlan's body brutally. Sir God Qianlan, who was an almighty, had a strong divine body, and had cultivated a secret skill of defense. He was also wearing armor. His defensive power was terrifyingly strong. However, as Hong Yung golden sword hit him, he spat a mouthful of blood, and his aura instantly dropped. The experts surrounding the battlefield saw the scene, and everyone was dumbfounded. Injured? Sir God Qianlan is injured? An almighty against a real god, and the almighty is severely injured. Forget about the fact that real god Jiugong and real god Han Quan were defeated previously. They were only real gods after all. But Sir God Qianlan was a true almighty. Jian Wushuang injured an almighty? Unbelievable. Everyone found it unbelievable. Real god Han Quan, who was watching the battle at the border of the battlefield, was staring with his eyes wide open. Real god Han Quan didn't notice that Jian Wushuang, who had just performed moon-picking skill in collaboration of Hong Jun golden sword to injure Sir God Qianlan, was looking at him with his pair of cold eyes. The lesson has been taught. Next, there was a chilly gleam in his eyes. Chapter 1693 Suppression. Chapter 1693 Suppression. Just as everyone was in a state of surprise, swoosh, Jian Wushuang created countless shadows instantly. At the same time as his body moved, the Hong Jun golden sword shook slightly and changed its direction toward Jian Wushuang. As for Jian Wushuang's target, it was real god Han Quan of the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Not good. It was obvious that real god Han Quan had realized Jian Wushuang's intention as well. His expression then changed greatly at once, and he did his best to escape. However, he had been staying at the edge of the battlefield, and he was not that far away from Jian Wushuang to begin with. Moreover, after Jian Wushuang wounded Sir God Qianlan fatally, which caused everyone to be in a state of shock, he attacked him without any warning. In addition, his speed was extremely fast, and when real god Han Quan reacted, it was already too late. The ray of golden light which was dragging its long tail like a comet appeared in front of real god Han Quan instantly, and attacked him right away. Real god Han Quan swung the long spear in his hands immediately to block the attack. However, in the end, with just one attack bam, the long spear in real god Han Quan's hands was sent flying at once, and the ray of golden light continued piercing real god Han Quan's body, without any decrease in power. Puff! Real god Han Quan spit out a huge mouthful of blood again. His expression, which was already pale to begin with, became deathly pale like paper. His aura also plunged to rock bottom. As for Jian Wushuang, his body had already appeared in front of real god Han Quan, and he swung the Blood Mountain sword in his hands fiercely. Although he swung a long sword, the Blood Mountain sword turned into a vast and lofty mountain in the next moment. The bottom of the lofty mountain then released many marvelous secret patterns, and they covered real god Han Quan completely. After that, the secret patterns threw real god Han Quan, who was struggling madly, into the mountain. After finishing that, the lofty mountain changed into a long sword again, and appeared in Jian Wushuang's hands. While holding the Blood Mountain sword tightly, Jian Wushuang shot a glance toward real god Jiugong, the purple-robed old man, who was already far away and was escaping crazily. This real god Jiugong is indeed very cunning, Jian Wushuang murmured. Originally, Jian Wushuang had planned to kill real god Jiugong straight away, and then suppress real god Han Quan. However, real god Jiugong was very intelligent. When Sir God Qianlan appeared on the battlefield, he ran away to a distant void, and he was not like real god Han Quan who stayed at the edge of the battlefield, as he was extremely confident in Sir God Qianlan. In the end, Jian Wushuang took action abruptly, and real God Han Quan was suppressed by him, as he could not escape in time. As for real God Jiugong, Jian Wushuang had no way to deal with him again. However, even if real God Jiugong were unable to escape in time, it would probably not be that easy for me to kill him, Jian Wushuang muttered. Real God Jiugong was ranked 5th in the Real God ranking list. He was not just strong in terms of abilities. Instead, he was also strong in terms of his many techniques, and in particular, his techniques to stay alive. It should be known that even the lineage of Star was unable to do anything against him. It was said that even the Star Palace Master of the lineage of Star had gone after him personally before. However, he had still managed to escape. Although Jian Wushuang had injured Sir God Qianlan seriously, he would not be that arrogant and think that he was stronger than the Star Palace Master. Jian Wushuang. All of a sudden, a voice which was filled with an infinite amount of anger could be heard, and even the whole universe became filled with an unlimited amount of anger. At that moment, Sir God Qianlan's hair and mustache were blown up. His body was also emitting an extremely frightening aura, which caused everyone to be terrified. In addition, his eyes were scarlet in color, like a demon's. As for the experts who hid themselves near the void, even though they were far away, they could still feel the shocking anger from Sir God Qianlan. Why? Could it be that Sir God Qianlan still wishes to fight with me? Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. The Hongjun golden sword which was floating quietly beside him shook abruptly, and it looked as if it could change into a ray of golden light again, any time to attack. After Sir God Qianlan glanced at Jian Wushuang, an unusual light flashed in his eyes, and his expression turned gloomy like water. Release Han Quan. If not, the Soaring Heaven King Palace will fight with you to our last gasp. Haha, what a joke! Could it be that the Soaring Heaven King Palace and I are not already fighting to our last gasp now? Jian Wushuang sneered wantonly. Since we have already fought to this extent, there is nothing for me to fear. Jian Wushuang's words had caused the hidden experts to nod their heads in agreement. Indeed, since Jian Wushuang and the Soaring Heaven King Palace had fought to such an extent, it had been considered a fight to their last gasp a long time ago. At that moment, Sir God Qianlan still used fighting to their last gasp to threaten Jian Wushuang. However, his words were totally meaningless. Jian Wushuang, looks like you really want to start a huge battle between the Soaring Heaven King Palace and the lineage of Star. Sir God Qianlan's voice was gloomy and cold. A great battle between two top powerhouses will involve many things. Hence, I advise you to think thoroughly. Even if you are not thinking for yourself, you have to think of the lineage of Star, which is behind you. A great battle? Sir God Qianlan, don't use a great battle to frighten me. Even if we were to go into a great battle, what about it? The Soaring Heaven King Palace is indeed strong. However, do you think that the lineage of Star is afraid of them? Jian Wushuang's eyes were icy cold. When he had clashed with the Soaring Heaven King Palace head-on, he had already checked with Hall Master Yuan. Hall Master Yuan also told him before that he could just go for it and not be worried about anything. With the lineage of Star as well as the Palace Master present, even the heavens would not collapse. Hall Master Yuan's words had caused Jian Wushuang to be extremely confident, and he did not have any more worries. Moreover, even if a great battle were to occur, it would not be caused by me. Instead, it would be caused by the Soaring Heaven King Palace. Jian Wushuang bellowed. Damn it! You have killed quite a number of the Soaring Heaven King Palace's chaotic real gods in succession, and you still dare to say that the great battle is started by the Soaring Heaven King Palace? Sir God Qianlan became furious at once. I killed them as they deserved to die. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and gloomy. After that, he waved his big hands and a video appeared in the void immediately. In the video, there were two people. One of them was Jian Wushuang, while the other person was real God Ziyi, who had already died. In the video, both of them were standing opposite each other, with a huge distance between them. The conversation that they were having also could be heard across the universe. During the conversation, It was obviously mentioned that at the very start, as real god Guing had cast his greedy eyes on Jian Wushuang's grade 3 demon core, he had taken the initiative to snatch it from Jian Wushuang. As for Jian Wushuang, he had killed real god Guing in order to protect himself. Even real god Ziyi himself admitted to it. Moreover, real god Ziyi even said in the end, no matter what the reason is, as long as you kill the Soaring Heaven King Palace's people, you must die. After that, both of them started to fight. When the video came to an end, the truth was exposed in front of everyone. As for the experts who were hidden at the void nearby, all of them saw it and heard it clearly. Sir God Qianlan, do you have anything left to say now? Jian Wushuang's cry reverberated across the universe. The video was made back then when Jian Wushuang had intentionally led real god Ziyi to do what he did. Back then, he had thought that such a situation would occur in the future. Hence, he was prepared for it, and he had recorded the video. With the video present, at the very least, the reasoning was on Jian Wushuang's side. Chapter 1694 Terms and Conditions. Chapter 1694 Terms and Conditions. In this world, although the strong are victorious and fists represent everything, when both parties are evenly matched and no one can do anything to the other, reasoning becomes very important. Jian Wushuang was smiling coldly in his heart. The moment the image played, the experts hidden in the nearby void gasped in surprise. I see, that's what happened. Hee, because he cast greedy eyes over Jian Wushuang's treasure, he was killed. It could only be said that he wasn't powerful enough. He can't blame anyone else. But Soaring Heaven King Palace intentionally sent experts to go after Jian Wushuang, which led to what happened today. At first, Soaring Heaven King Palace said that it was Jian Wushuang who coveted real god Gu Ying's treasure and killed real god Guing. They are so shameless. Not only are they shameless, they are barbaric. Regardless of the reason, as long as one kills people from Soaring Heaven King Palace, they must die. Soaring Heaven King Palace is full of themselves. They considered various forces beneath them. The experts sighed emotionally. Although no one would get involved, the experts had already taken Jian Wushuang's side from the bottom of their hearts. The incident had obviously happened because Soaring Heaven King Palace was too arrogant and shameless. Since the beginning, Jian Wushuang had only been counterattacking in a passive manner. Sir God Qianlan's face grew grave. He had never thought that Jian Wushuang would keep a trump card on hand. The moment the image was shown, Soaring Heaven King Palace was destined to be embarrassed. Sir God Qianlan took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in him. He looked at Jian Wushuang. Young man, you should know real God Han Quan's importance to Soaring Heaven King Palace. I know, of course I know. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Real God Han Quan was the #1 real god in Soaring Heaven King Palace. He was in the 11th place on real god ranking list. Plus, he was truly a genius. He didn't take a long time to grow to his current stage, and he was full of potential. Although he wasn't like Jian Wushuang, he stood a great chance to break through and become an almighty. Such a genius was of course unusually important to Soaring Heaven King Palace. Tell me, what do you want us to do for you to release Han Quan? Sir God Qianlan's voice was low. He had no choice. If Jian Wushuang were to just be an ordinary chaotic real god, or even just an expert on real god ranking list, he would not hesitate to kill Jian Wushuang. But the crucial thing was that the power that Jian Wushuang had displayed was not any weaker than his. Even during the earlier fight, he had had the lower hand. With such power, he couldn't kill Jian Wushuang at all. He could only suppress his anger and murderous intention. Sir God Qianlan, if you said so, let's talk about terms. Jian Wushuang smiled. The scene before his eyes was within his expectations. Actually, with his power, he could totally kill real God Han Quan straight away, but he didn't. He only held him back using Blood Mountain Sword. Jian Wushuang did so, of course, with something in mind. To him, it didn't matter to kill real God Han Quan or not. After all, real God Han Quan couldn't pose a threat to him. But he wanted to utilize real God Han Quan to bring himself some benefit. At the same time, He could also make soaring heaving King Palace's heart ache. You want me to release real God Han Quan? Soaring Heaven King Palace has to fulfill 3 conditions, Jian Wushuang said coldly. 3 conditions? Sir God Qianlong pressed down the anger in him. Say them. Firstly, I need some doctrine gems. As for the amount, not much, just 100,000 doctrine gems, Jian Wushuang smiled. Phew! In the void, there were gasps of surprise. Jian Wushuang shook everyone as he spoke. 100,000 doctrine gem? One should know that an ordinary chaotic real god's possession would most likely be around 1 to 200 doctrine gems, while a top chaotic real god would be decent enough to have 1,000 doctrine gems. 100,000 doctrine gems would require 100 top chaotic real god to make up the sum. To any ordinary real god, the amount was beyond imagination. All right, I promise you that. Sir God Qianlan's face remained unchanged. 100,000 doctrine gem was naturally an astronomical figure to a real god. However, to an almighty, it wasn't much. To Soaring Heaven King Palace, which was a great force, it was nothing. Secondly, I need some demon cores. It's best if they are grade 3 and above. As for the amount, the ordinary black grade 3 demon cores, 1,000 of them, green grade 3 demon cores, 100, crimson grade 3 demon cores, slightly less, about 10 will do, Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. The experts hidden in the void heard that, and everyone was staring. Demon cores were something that only the 8 layers had. They could only be obtained by hunting star demons. The demon cores that Jian Wushuang asked for, even if they killed 1/10 of the star demons in the 8th layer, they probably couldn't gather the number. All right, Sir God Qianlan's corners of his lips quivered. If an almighty was willing to head to the 7th layer, or the 6th layer to wander and massacre star demons, he almost wouldn't come across anything threatening, as long he didn't enter the dark region. He should be able to gather the demon cores after a few thousand years. To Soaring Heaven King Palace, it could be accepted. Comment. The last condition. You know that I am cultivating on Thunderbolt Island, and I have the token of the Fairy Palace's legacy, but it's a pity that the cultivation time on my token of the Fairy Palace's legacy isn't much left. So, I'd like to get some from Soaring Heaven King Palace. Not many, just 500 years will do, Jian Wushuang smiled. Dream on. This time, Sir God Qianlong couldn't hold back anymore but roared with anger. If he wasn't bothered about Jian Wushuang's power, he would have cut him into 8 big pieces long ago. The experts hidden were shocked too. They could tell that Jian Wushuang was demanding an exorbitant price. The token of the Fairy Palace's legacy was different from Doctrine Gem and Demon Cores. It wasn't something that you could have if you wanted. Sanctuary Alliance distributed the tokens of the Fairy Palace's legacy every 300,000 years. Although Soaring Heaven King Palace was the top force, they only received 2 every 300,000 years. Every time they received the tokens, they would immediately give them to geniuses under their command. It could be said that the token of the Fairy Palace's legacy was extremely precious to Soaring Heaven King Palace. But then, Jian Wushuang was asking for 500 years of cultivation time in Fairy Palace. It equaled 5 tokens of the Fairy Palace's legacy. Sir God Qianlong, don't be angry just yet. Although 500 years of cultivation time in Fairy Palace is precious, it couldn't be compared to a genius who could break through and become an almighty, right? Jian Wushuang smiled. How about this? You can return to discuss with your palace master and higher-ups in Soaring Heaven King Place. Come and look for me when you have made a decision. I'll give you 100 years' time to discuss. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.